Poland during World War II. However, we still cannot make a definitive judgment. Fang Jian replied with a smile, I understand, thank you, Principal Su. Su Yinghan waved his hand. I have a suggestion. If you'll allow it, we can help you contact experts in Germany and Poland. To my knowledge, they should have photographs of this painting. Fang Jian laughed, that would be wonderful. Thank you for your help, Principal Su. He paused, then added, if the experts there are willing to come, I can cover their travel and appraisal fees. Su Yinghan laughed heartily. Young Fang, you're joking. If they knew the melancholy was here, they'd rush over themselves, no need for you to spend a penny. Fang Jian nodded slightly in gratitude. Seizing the moment, Su Yinghan pressed, then might we take a few photographs for our records? Of course, Fang Jian replied without hesitation. After all, how could anyone believe you possessed the painting without photographic proof? After all, both Germany and Poland were worlds away from China. And those so-called appraisal masters were undoubtedly masters in the field of painting themselves. Getting them to come here would be no easy task. Several people gathered around the painting, snapping photos incessantly. A few eyes gleamed with such intensity, they seemed ready to clutch the painting to their chests. Suddenly, an elderly man remarked, Principal Su, keeping such a precious work of art in private hands seems rather inappropriate. Everyone froze, turning their gaze toward him in unison. It was a frail, white-haired old man who looked at Fang Jian and declared with righteous conviction, Comrade Fang, I suggest you place this painting in our school. We will safeguard it for you. The others exchanged bewildered glances, unsure how to respond. Su Yinghan and Tan Moyang felt particularly awkward. Fang Jian raised his eyebrows and smiled. Esteemed gentlemen, may I ask who you are? The old man replied, I am the former principal of this school. My name is Wang Linxin. Oh, the former principal. I've long admired your reputation, Fang Jian replied with a smile. However, I'm afraid I cannot accept your suggestion. Wang Linxin frowned. Why not? Fang Jian chuckled softly. Principal Wang, do you know how much this painting is worth? Wang Linxin answered without hesitation, it's priceless. How could you measure a work of art with money? Chapter 207, this painting should be donated to the school. Fang Jian smiled faintly. Then, old principal, may I ask why you wish to keep this painting at the school? The old principal's eyes lit up. Regardless of whether it's by Dürer, its artistic value is immeasurable. Its composition and lines are exceptionally refined and rare, truly worthy of study. Therefore, he straightened his chest, his voice solemn and righteous. I believe this painting belongs in the school, where everyone can view and learn from it. That would benefit us all. Yes, the old principal is absolutely right. The old principal has foresight. The old principal thought of everyone. Young comrade, you should support this. In the staircase art gallery, some chimed in with agreement, but more stood by coldly observing. Clearly, they knew this idea was far-fetched. But what if? What if this youngster got carried away and agreed? Anything was possible. Tan Moyang stepped forward and said, Principal, what you're doing isn't fair. Fang Jian was about to speak, but upon hearing his future mother-in-law's words, he fell silent once more. Besides, he wanted to see how she would handle this. Still, Fang Jian was confident that even for Luan Wani's sake, she wouldn't jeopardize his interests. Wang Linxin frowned deeply. Tan, how is this unfair? I'm doing this for you, for the school. Tan Moyang smiled and replied, yes, you truly have the school and our best interests at heart. I admit that if this painting were in our school, it would certainly bring us fame. It would help with future enrollment and assist our students in finding jobs after graduation. Everyone nodded in agreement, finding this perspective entirely reasonable. If a school possessed a world-renowned painting worth $100 million, its fame would spread nationwide overnight, benefiting everyone connected to the institution. Tan Moyang's smile suddenly faded. Principal, you've only considered the school, but you haven't thought about Xiao Feng. This painting belongs to him, he holds the ownership. What right do you have to ask him to make such a sacrifice? Wang Linxin froze, his aged face flushing slightly. After a moment of silence, he said, Tan, he's your friend. You can try to persuade him. After all, it's all for the good of the school. Fang Jian's gaze toward the old man couldn't help but carry a hint of contempt. For the good of the school? Damn it, what does the state of your school have to do with me? Even if you're trying to morally blackmail me, this is completely irrelevant. Tan Moyang chuckled. Principal, you think too highly of me. If this painting is genuine, it's worth $100 million. How could I possibly have enough clout to convince them to leave it here? The old principal pursed his lips. Though he said nothing, anyone could see he was deeply reluctant. Fang Jian chuckled and suddenly spoke up, Principal, it's actually not difficult to get me to donate the painting to the school. Tan Moyang's expression shifted slightly as she shot Fang Jian a suspicious look, her gaze sharp. This kid, has he lost his mind? The others present were overjoyed. Not only the old principal, but even Su Yinghan's eyes sparkled with excitement. If Fang Jian truly donated this painting to the school, then as the principal, he would undoubtedly be the greatest beneficiary. So, even though he had initially resented the old principal's words, at this moment, he found himself wholeheartedly agreeing. Young man, are you serious? Wang Lingxin asked excitedly. Fang Jian chuckled. Yes, as long as you can accomplish two things, donating this painting is no trouble at all. What are those two things? Someone called out impatiently. They all thought to themselves, what a year. This is especially crazy. A painting worth $100 million could be donated? Why couldn't such a miracle happen to me? Fang Jian observed the fervor in their eyes and spoke slowly. I understand that the Palace Museum in Beijing houses the along the river during the Qingming Festival, while the Louvre Museum in France holds the Mona Lisa. If you can persuade these two institutions to donate these paintings to you, then I too am willing to make my donation. The room fell silent. Everyone exchanged bewildered glances, almost convinced they'd misheard. Wang Lingxin froze for a moment before snapping, Young man, what on earth are you talking about? Fang Jian blinked innocently and replied, I'm speaking Mandarin, aren't I? But Tan Moyang finally couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. She wasn't alone, several teachers also smiled wryly. Su Yinghan's face turned distinctly awkward. He finally understood that Fang Jian had been thoroughly mocking them. But anger? Not quite. Ultimately, it was his own greed that had led him here. Wang Lingxin's face darkened with fury. Young man, do you even know what those two paintings are? The Along the River during the Qingming Festival is our national treasure, one of the 10 great paintings. The Mona Lisa is a masterpiece by Da Vinci. How could they possibly donate them to us? It's completely unreasonable. Impossible. Fang Jian's smile slowly faded. He replied, Indeed, it seems you understand that asking them to donate paintings to you is unreasonable and impossible. But his tone suddenly turned stern. Then why do you think it's only natural for them not to donate, yet now you expect me to? Did I eat rice from your family's fields? You. Wang Lingxin was so furious he couldn't speak. He stomped his foot heavily and turned to leave. In the classroom, a few people hurried out. But most remained unmoved. After this exchange, however, everyone understood. This young man was not someone to be trifled with. Su Yinghan rubbed his hands awkwardly. Mr. Fang, I'm truly sorry for making you witness this. When they first met, he had followed Tan Moyang in addressing him as Little Fang, but under these circumstances, even with his thick skin, he couldn't bring himself to say it now. Fang Jian shook his head slightly. Principal Su, this is merely his personal conduct. It has nothing to do with you. Su Yinghan breathed a sigh of relief. I'm glad you see it that way. Deep down, he knew this incident would inevitably leave lingering resentment between them. But as long as it didn't affect future cooperation, that was all that mattered. Fang Jian stepped forward, carefully stowed the painting, and said, Aunt Tan, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Tan Moyang nodded gently, but suddenly remembered something. Wait a moment, Xiao Fang. She turned to Su Yinghan. Principal Su, I invited Xiao Fang here. After what happened, you can't pretend you didn't know. Su Yinghan gave a wry smile. But I already apologized earlier. Tan Moyang replied with a smile, empty apologies won't suffice. Show some concrete action. Su Yinghan sighed helplessly. All right. I promise to invite those experts over with the utmost sincerity to authenticate this painting. Only then did Tan Moyang nod. Principal Su, besides this matter, could you do me another favor? Go ahead. When Xiao Fang got this painting, he also found some gold coins. Could you help authenticate them? Su Yinghan breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled, that's easy enough. But I don't know much about gold coins. If I make a mistake, don't hold it against me. Both Fang Jian and Su Yinghan understood why Tan Moyang chose this moment to bring up these matters. Was to use this opportunity to mend their relationship. Though Fang Jian felt some resentment, this was his mother-in-law's university, and they needed her expertise to authenticate the melancholy. After a moment's thought, he gladly accepted. Su Yinghan waved to the crowd, and it took a while before everyone finally dispersed. Yet murmurs lingered, why couldn't they have stayed longer? Yet it never occurred to them to ask. If the painting truly belonged to him, would he be willing to bring it out for everyone to admire? Chapter 208, Would you sell this gold coin? Upon entering the principal's office, Su Yinghan's expression finally relaxed. He began apologetically, Mr. Fang, although Vice Principal Wang has retired, he still has a strong sense of public service. It's just that his way of expressing it was a bit off. Please forgive him once again. Fang Jian paused. When Su Yinghan mentioned the old man, not only did he refer to him as Vice Principal Old Wang, but he also deliberately emphasized the name. Though Fang Jian knew little about politics, he could sense the deep hostility Su Yinghan harbored toward the old principal. Su Yinghan continued, Mr. Fang, Old Wang still wields some influence within the cultural system. Since he didn't get what he wanted today, he might not let this rest. So, it'd be wise for you to be cautious lately. Fang Jian chuckled dryly. What, does he plan to resort to violence and seize it by force? Su Yinghan waved her hand dismissively. Mr. Fang, you're joking. He's a man of letters, after all. He wouldn't stoop to such things. She paused, then added, still, that painting is quite valuable. You'd be wise to keep it safe. Fang Jian considered it. Alright, I'll head to the bank later and rent a safe deposit box. Su Yinghan nodded. That's a good idea. I suggest renting one at the Bank of China headquarters in Yongcheng. It's a bit pricey, but it's secure. In truth, bank safe deposit box services were commonplace nowadays, offered by many financial institutions. For ordinary items, any branch with safe deposit boxes would suffice. But given the painting's immense value, naturally the best and most secure bank should be chosen. Tan Moyang waited until they finished speaking before saying, Principal Su, shall we begin now? Fang Jian and Su Yinghan exchanged a knowing smile. After this discussion, the tension between them had visibly eased. Fang Jian and Tan Moyang both retrieved the gold coins from their possession. Su Yinghan looked on, momentarily startled. Tan Moyang made no attempt to conceal it. Principal Su, these gold coins were found by Xiao Fang in Poland. He gave a few to our family, and I thought I'd bring them along for your appraisal. Su Yinghan chuckled heartily. Very well. I hope they won't disappoint you. Only then did he realize that the relationship between these two must be quite special. But then again, it made sense. If their relationship were ordinary, how could they have brought such a precious painting over with just a single phone call? Regaining his composure, Su Yinghan examined the gold coins meticulously. He handled them with great care. First, he laid all the coins on a clean silk cloth. Then, wearing gloves and holding a magnifying glass, he examined them meticulously. At first, his movements were swift and effortless. Judging by his pace alone, it was clear he wasn't taking it too seriously. Seeing this, Tan Moyang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed these gold coins weren't particularly valuable. Of course, anything related to gold couldn't be cheap. But if it was just gold, then these few small coins wouldn't amount to much. After all, his family even owned a set of panda gold coins worth hundreds of thousands. At worst, they could simply gift Xiaofang a set in return, hardly bribery. Then, at that very moment, Su Yinghan's movements abruptly halted. In his hand lay a gold coin severely tarnished and faded. Judging solely by its appearance, this coin could hardly be called a gold coin anymore. Among the many coins, its color was undoubtedly the palest and most inconspicuous. Yet Su Yinghan held it, turning it over and over in his hands, examining it intently. Tan Moyang's heart stirred slightly. She recognized this was the very gold coin Fang Jian had delivered to her home last night. She had initially thought it was merely filler, but now it seemed unlikely. Su Yinghan hesitated for a moment before carefully placing the gold coin onto another silk cloth. His movements were so gentle it made one wonder if he was holding not a gold coin, but a piece of tofu, the kind so tender it would crumble at the slightest touch. Su Yinghan set down his magnifying glass and said, Mr. Fang, I'm not entirely certain about this gold coin. I'd like to have a numismatist take a look at it. Would that be acceptable? Certainly. Thank you for your trouble, Principal Su. Generally speaking, if an appraiser says they're unsure, then it means this item is most likely a fake. But judging by Su Yinghan's expression at that moment, his uncertainty was genuine, which is precisely why he wanted to bring in a true numismatic expert. The world of antiques and collectibles is incredibly complex. It demands vast cultural knowledge, something beyond the reach of ordinary people. Those within the circle are true connoisseurs, but outsiders are merely clueless, easy targets. However, with Tan Moyang acting as a bridge and given what had just transpired, Su Yinghan would absolutely not harbor any ill intentions. Right in front of them, Su Yinghan made a phone call. Then he proceeded to continue appraising the other gold coins. Yet both Fang Jian and Tan Moyang could tell. Su Yinghan seemed distracted, glancing back toward the solitary gold coin display every so often. It seemed as though all the other coins combined held less value than that one. Finally, Su Yinghan finished examining all the gold coins. He selected 7 distinct coins, while the rest were mixed together. Just then, Su Yinghan's phone rang. He answered it, exchanged a few words, and opened the door. A balding elderly man, several years older than Su, stepped inside. He glanced at Fang Jian and Tan Moyang, then declared with a broad grin, "What was the rush calling me over? What coins? Even you can't tell them apart?" Su Yinghan chuckled and said, "Let me introduce you. This is Master Lu Hua, our coin expert from Yongcheng. His family runs 3 antique shops. If you ever have anything to sell, just go to him." He continued, "Old Lu, this is Teacher Tan from our school. And this is the owner of the coin you were asked to appraise." Fang Jian smiled and said, "Hello, Master Lu. My name is Fang Jian. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Fang." Lu Hua nodded slightly. "What coin is it?" His eyes, however, had already drifted toward the table. He wasn't blind, one glance told him coins were being appraised here. Su Yinghan beckoned him over. "Come here. Take a look for yourself." Lu Hua walked over, already pulling a pair of white gloves from his pocket and slipping them on as he approached. Fang Jian couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. A true professional, indeed, he'd come prepared. Lu Yi approached the table. His gaze swept across the items, and his eyes immediately landed on the 7 gold coins set apart. This wasn't surprising. One pile held a cluster of coins together. On the other side, 7 coins lay individually separated. Anyone could tell where the valuable ones were. Lu Ye's gaze swept over them, then suddenly he uttered a soft "hmm." He reached out and carefully picked up one gold coin. Fang Jian and Tan Moyang saw clearly that the one he picked up was precisely the one Su Yinghan had examined earlier. Lu Ye's expression turned unusually serious, his face gradually growing grave. After a long moment, he slowly lifted his head and asked, "Old Su, what do you think?" Su Yinghan chuckled helplessly. "I couldn't tell for sure, that's why I invited you over in the first place." Fang Jian knew this gold coin must be no ordinary thing, otherwise, these two wouldn't be wearing such expressions. But the more tense the situation became, the more he had to resist the urge to rush. So he simply sat silently to the side, maintaining a completely impassive demeanor. Lu Hua studied it for another long moment before suddenly turning to ask, "Mr. Fang, might you be interested in parting with this gold coin?" Su Yinghan's expression shifted slightly. "Old Lu, that's not how it's done." Lu Hua flushed, stammering awkwardly, "Don't get worked up. Just asking, that's all." Chapter 209, The Gold Coin, one of only 3 left in the world. In the antique world, certain unwritten rules exist. Though never written down, those who frequented the scene knew them well. Lu Hua had been invited by Su Yinghan to appraise the items. By convention, even if he saw something truly exceptional, he was not permitted to make an offer unless Su Yinghan explicitly stated he wouldn't purchase it. But this time, Lu Hua clearly lost his composure. Su Yinghan said solemnly, "Old Lu, tell me, is it that one?" Lu Hua hesitated, glancing toward Fang Jian. Su Yinghan sighed. "Old Lu, don't even think about snagging a bargain. That piece is worth $100 million. Don't even try to compete." $100 million? Lu Hua gasped. His gaze toward Fang Jian instantly changed. In truth, he was considered a wealthy man in Yongcheng. While not among the absolute elite, he was certainly in the upper tier. Antiques were a treacherous field for those who knew how to make money. It was truly lucrative. Every year, countless people tried their hand at antiques only to pay hefty tuition fees. But even he only kept a few million in cash on hand at any given time. $100 million? He wouldn't fetch that much even if he sold himself. Thus, Lu Hua's mind was racing with countless thoughts at that moment. In Yongcheng, which young master possessed such wealth? Or was this some outsider who'd come to make a name for himself? Su Yinghan, an old friend of his, saw his troubled expression and knew he was overthinking it. With a wry smile, he urged, "Old Lu, stop stalling. Spit it out." Lu Hua cleared his throat softly. "All right, for your sake, I'll tell you the truth." He pointed at the gold coin before him and said, "If I'm not mistaken, this gold coin is most likely an Edward III florin." Fang Jian raised his eyebrows slightly but remained silent, for he had no idea what the term meant. Lu Hua continued, "The Edward III florin was minted between 1300 and 1400. I don't recall the exact year. But it is indeed one of the oldest and rarest coins still in existence today." After a pause, he added, "As far as I know, few collectors currently hold this coin. Public records indicate only 3 exist." 3? Fang Jian and Tan Moyang exchanged glances, finally understanding why the two experts had reacted that way after authenticating the coin. Setting aside its monetary value, its sheer rarity alone was utterly captivating. If this truly was that Edward III florin coin, it would be the 4th known example in the world. A coin like this, if it found its way to the right person, no price tag would seem unreasonable. Of course, gold coins still couldn't be compared to genuine works of art. So, fetching tens of millions at auction? Possibly. But reaching the 100 million mark? Absolutely impossible. Lu Hua stared intently at the gold coin, murmuring to himself, "This coin itself holds considerable value because it's crafted from pure gold. To collectors, it's a perfect ancient coin. Mr. Lu, if we sent it to an auction house, how much do you think it could fetch?" Fang Jian asked. Lu Hua gave a wry smile. "Hard to say, really hard to say. But if you took it to Carlsberg Auction House, this coin would be worthy of being a treasure at their spring and autumn auction. If someone really liked it, they might bid 10 or 20 million. US dollars? Lu Hua froze, exclaiming in disbelief, "How could that be possible?" Fang Jian's lips curled. So it was only 10 or 20 million yuan. His interest instantly waned. Seeing Fang Jian's reaction, Lu Hua grew even more convinced that this guy must be a second-generation heir, and one with immense wealth at that. "Old Lu, help me check the others. See if we missed anything," Su Yinghan urged. Lu Yi sighed, reluctantly setting down the coin before beginning to examine the others. After going through the entire collection, his verdict was that the rest were indeed gold coins, but they were all relatively common and had a large number of surviving specimens. While they could fetch some money, compared to the Edward III florin coin, it was like night and day. Fang Jian stood up. "Thank you, Principal Su, and thank you, Mr. Lu. I'll go secure the painting now. I'll treat you both to a meal later." Good. Su Yinghan personally escorted him to the door, adding, "Mr. Fang, once the German and Polish appraisers arrive, please bring the painting out for them to examine." "Rest assured, Principal Su," Fang Jian replied with a smile. I'll be on my way now. Turning to Tan Moyang, he added. Tan Moyang said, Principal, I'll see Mr. Fang out. All right. Su Yinghan watched them walk away with a smile, then let out a long sigh. Today she had been treated to two precious treasures, but alas, the time had been far too brief. Lu Yi leaned in and asked, Old Su, whose son is this guy? How come he's got $100 million? Su Yinghan shook his head slightly. I don't know whose son he is either, but he has a painting in his possession. If it's genuine, it could easily fetch at least $100 million at auction. Holy, Lu Yi blurted out, what kind of painting is worth that much? A Western copperplate engraving. You wouldn't know it anyway. Lu Ye's eyes darted around. Those gold coins he has are Western too. Are they related to the painting? Probably, Su Yinghan murmured. But from start to finish, he never once asked Tan Moyang about the painting's origins. Auntie, I have a lunch appointment, so I won't be able to treat you to a meal, Fang Jian said with a smile. He didn't have a damn appointment, he just felt uncomfortable being alone with his future mother-in-law. Tan Moyang nodded gently. Before your appointment, go to the bank first. All right. After saying that, Fang Jian casually handed over the Edward III florin coin and the gold coin she had given him yesterday. Auntie, these are yours. No, Tan Moyang's expression darkened slightly. How could you just give away something so valuable? Take it back and keep it with the painting. Fang Jian smiled. Auntie, I didn't know these coins were valuable before giving them. But since I've already given them, it wouldn't be right to take them back. Tan Moyang frowned. Young Fang, you may be wealthy, but our family won't accept them. She paused, took the other gold coins, then returned the Edward III florin. All right then. I'll take the others, but this one stays with me. Fang Jian gave her a deep look and said, very well, Auntie. I'll be on my way. Drive safely. Watching Fang Jian's car drive away, Tan Moyang breathed a slight sigh of relief. Truthfully, when Fang Jian had offered the gold coins just moments ago, she had been genuinely tempted. But thankfully, she had ultimately held firm. Fang Jian started his car and drove away from the school. He called Fang Xiaohua to ask for advice. As a lawyer, he frequently dealt with banks and recommended a place to Fang Jian. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China's main branch in Yongcheng offered safe deposit box rentals. The boxes were categorized into 5 tiers, A, B, C, D, and E, with the most expensive costing 3,000 yuan per month. This price was certainly not cheap, at least 3 times more expensive than those offered by smaller banks or branch offices. But this was undoubtedly the most reliable place. As Fang Jian entered the bank, someone called out, Fang Jian? Startled, he turned and smiled. Oh my, old classmate, it's you. Yu Yudi, the class beauty back in high school. Fang Jian had only seen her once before, at their high school reunion shortly after college graduation. His memory of her was somewhat hazy. But now, upon seeing her again, those memories instantly came flooding back. Chapter 210, Old Classmate. Yu Yudi wore a bank-style business suit, radiating the sharp, capable aura of a career woman. A faint professional smile graced her face, yet the spark of genuine delight in her eyes was impossible to hide. After a morning of work, she was feeling a bit weary. Suddenly, she spotted an old classmate. It wasn't that she harbored any particular feelings toward him, she simply felt a surge of happiness and surprise. Yu Yudi, you work here? Fang Jian asked in surprise. Yes, I am. Are you here for business? Yeah, I'd like to rent a safe deposit box, Fang Jian smiled. It's so much easier when you know someone here. How do I go about it? I'm not too familiar with that process myself. Let me go ask someone. Yu Yudi pulled out a phone. A moment later, she said, follow me. With her guidance, Fang Jian completed all the paperwork in just over 20 minutes and successfully placed the copperplate engraving into the safe deposit box. Though the painting wasn't large, Fang Jian rented the largest E-model safe deposit box. He didn't just put the print inside, he tossed that box of stones and gold coins in there too. In the past, Fang Jian wouldn't have minded keeping things at home. After all, no one knew he possessed such precious treasures at home. Moreover, thieves generally avoided new residential complexes like this one, with security guards and extensive surveillance cameras. But things were different now. Fang Jian believed the news that he possessed the famous painting Melancholy would soon spread. By then, if he still kept the painting at home, the security guards in the neighborhood would likely offer little deterrent. So Fang Jian decided to take the stone too and dispose of it as well. Yu Yudi didn't ask what it was, but waited outside the door. After stashing the items away, Fang Jian emerged and said, old classmate, what a coincidence to run into you. Fancy grabbing lunch together? Yu Yudi hesitated for a moment before smiling, sure, it's my treat. Before Fang Jian could refuse, she added, there's a great barbecue place nearby, the food is fantastic. A barbecue place? Fang Jian paused, his gaze lingering over her figure. The former class beauty was still quite impressive, her figure remained absolutely stunning. Hey, what kind of look is that? Yu Yudi said, slightly annoyed. If she were a young girl, she might have blushed at that moment. But a woman in her 30s had become quite feisty. Fang Jian shook his head slightly. Are you sure you want barbecue? What's wrong? Fang Jian grinned. I remember grilled meat makes you fat if you eat too much. You're not getting any younger, you know. Better watch what you eat. Yu Yuti froze, then snapped, you're such a downer. Why bring up something I don't want to hear? The two left the bank and, following Yu Yuti's lead, entered a place. Fang Jian glanced up at the sign. This wasn't a barbecue restaurant at all, it was a kanji restaurant. After finding a seat in the dining hall, Fang Jian whispered, old classmate, where's the barbecue? Yu Yuti retorted irritably, grilled meat makes you fat. Women our age can't afford to eat like that. Fang Jian rolled his eyes and gave his own cheek a light slap. Serves you right for talking. He was training in martial arts now, with an appetite far exceeding that of ordinary people, and he needed large amounts of meat. Porridge, fine for health, but really not for him. But seeing Yu Yuti plop down and refuse to budge, Fang Jian knew there was no chance of moving seats today. Yu Yuti smiled, picked up the menu, and said, what would you like? Go ahead and order. Fang Jian glanced at the menu. Besides various kanjis, it also offered some dishes. Do you come here often? Yeah, their crab kanji is fantastic. Add 2 ounces of river shrimp and I guarantee it'll be so delicious, you'll want to eat your tongue along with it. Fang Jian nodded silently. You stay here. I'll go pick out the crabs. Nowadays, many places offer mobile self-service ordering. But when it came to seafood, that wasn't always convenient. Fang Jian stood up and walked to the ordering counter, where various seafood was displayed. This kanji restaurant was renowned in Yongcheng for its seafood kanji. The kanji itself was prepared well in advance. But the seafood was caught and prepared fresh, making it incredibly delicious. Fang Jian selected a large lobster, a hairy crab, half a pound of river shrimp, and a giant clam. Seeing his generous selection, the server inquired, Sir, how many are in your party? 2. 2? Yes. Please prepare 3 large bowls of kanji, 1 lobster, 1 elephant trunk clam, and 1 portion of shrimp and crab. The waiter looked up, hesitated, and said, Sir, our kanji portions are quite large. If there are only 2 of you, 1 serving should be plenty. Fang Jian glanced at him and said, I can take the leftovers home. Ah, yes. Watching the waiter place the order, Fang Jian ordered 6 cold dishes all meat-based except for 1 cucumber salad. Back at their table, he exchanged just a few words with Yu Yuti before the cold dishes arrived. Yu Yuti glanced at them and chuckled, what's this? Not having the grilled meat made you unhappy? For 2 people eating kanji, usually just ordering 1 bowl of kanji and 2 cold dishes is sufficient. Fang Jian ordered 6 meat dishes and cold platters in one go, quite an unusual choice. Fang Jian smiled faintly and remarked, old classmate, treating me to a meal is actually a pretty bad deal for you. Why? Yu Yuti asked, puzzled. Fang Jian patted his stomach and explained, because I have a huge appetite. You're going to be bleeding money. Yu Yuti paused, then laughed. Don't worry, 1 meal won't bankrupt me. Fang Jian smiled silently. Just wait until you see the menu. He picked up his chopsticks and dug right in. They had been classmates in school, but after graduating from university, their paths rarely crossed. But when they happened to meet and shared a meal, they found themselves chatting animatedly. Especially when reminiscing about their college days, they found themselves laughing heartily. But soon, Yu Yuti's cheerful mood began to fade. Ha? Is this ours? This too? Yu Yuti stared at the 2 large pots of steaming seafood kanji on the table, her big eyes widening in surprise. One pot contained shrimp and crab kanji, the other featured elephant trunk clam kanji. Price wasn't an issue. Fang Jian had specifically requested large portions. What exactly was a large portion? It meant a single pot of kanji large enough to feed 3 to 4 people. Of course, when we say 3-4 people, we're talking about someone with Yu Yuti's appetite. For a bricklayer with a hearty appetite, 1 person could easily finish a single serving. But now, with 2 bowls of kanji and 6 cold dishes. Hey, Fang Jian, you did this on purpose, didn't you? Yu Yuti whispered. What do you mean, on purpose? Fang Jian asked innocently. Yu Yuti retorted irritably, you ordered so much, how are we supposed to finish it all? Are you planning to take leftovers home? People will laugh at us. Fang Jian chuckled. Old classmate, you need to update your mindset. Taking leftovers home after a meal is encouraged these days. He paused, then added, hurry up and eat. There's still another portion coming. Another one? Yu Yuti gasped. Yes. Hurry up and eat, or there won't be room for it later. Fang Jian spoke as he thoughtfully scooped a bowl of kanji for her, filled to the brim with crab meat and shrimp. Yu Yuti opened her mouth but held back, then began eating slowly. Then, her eyes truly widened. Because she saw 2 words, efficiency. Yu Yuti swore she'd never realized before that someone could eat with such efficiency. As Fang Jian ate his porridge, his mouth never stopped moving. Whatever entered his mouth was chewed just once before being swallowed. Were 6 cold dishes really that much? For 2 people, it certainly was. But in the blink of an eye, only a few drops of soup remained. Not only that, but when Yu Yuti finished the small bowl of porridge in front of her, she noticed that the 2 large portions were nearly empty too. She finally understood why Fang Jian had ordered 3 portions of kanji. Yet, looking at Fong Jian's stomach, which didn't seem particularly full, her mind was filled with puzzlement. Where did all that food go? Chapter 211, just transfer 10 million. When the third bowl of porridge arrived and was devoured by Fong Jian, Yu Yuti's gaze had become as strange as it could possibly be. Fong Jian rubbed his stomach and said, "Sit tight for a moment. I need to use the restroom." "Pfft, you're just trying to use the bathroom as an excuse to dodge the bill," Yu Yuti scoffed. "What, do you think so little of me? That I can't even afford to treat you to a meal?" Fong Jian immediately felt embarrassed standing up. He chuckled, "Hey, old classmate, I'm letting things slide. At least spare me some face." Yu Yuti gave a cold laugh. When she first saw Fong Jian order so much food, she had genuinely been surprised and puzzled. But when he actually finished every single thing on his plate, she realized this guy wasn't putting on a show. Sure, today's lunch had definitely gone over budget, way over budget. But meeting an old classmate, especially one as eccentric as this, had genuinely lightened her mood. Yu Yuti glanced at the time and sighed, "Ah, Fong Jian, I can't stay with you any longer." Fong Jian chuckled, "What's up? Did the bank start work earlier today?" "Not early, but I have to go visit clients." "Oh?" Fong Jian was surprised. "I thought after all these years at the bank, you'd be sitting in an office by now. Why are you still running around after clients?" Yu Yuti replied with a hint of resentment, "What do you know? We handled both deposits and loans. One of my clients defaulted this year, so now I'm scrambling to drum up deposits." Fong Jian chuckled helplessly. "Really? That sounds tough. What's your deposit quota?" 10 million. "But I've already secured 7 million, just 3 million left to go." Yu Yuti batted her eyelashes. "So, what do you say? Will you go out on a limb for your beautiful classmate and give me a hand?" Fong Jian couldn't help but laugh. "Going out on a limb is for brothers. If you're heading to Taigua, I'll consider it." "Put." Yu Yuti spat indignantly. "Like you'd ever go to Taigua." Her eyes swept over him before she suddenly chuckled. "Besides, with your build, they probably wouldn't welcome you there anyway." It was true, Fong Jian had trained himself into a broad-shouldered, thick-waisted build for martial arts. This was genuine broad shoulders and thick waist, not some internet-trending doggy waist nonsense. Back in the Republic era, if any martial artist had trained himself into a doggy waist physique and then challenged someone to a duel, his chances of walking off the stage alive would have been slim to none. Such a burly, testosterone-fueled physique. Even if he wanted to go to Thailand for surgery, they'd likely turn him away 9 times out of 10. Because it's just too damn eye-watering. Fong Jian rolled his eyes. He was finally certain. The saying "women become wolves at 30" couldn't be more accurate. Back when they were fresh graduates, they'd never have uttered such words. Yu Yuti picked up her bag, stood up, and walked to the counter to pay the bill. Fong Jian didn't compete with her for the bill here. Only after stepping outside did he ask, "Old classmate, does the bank close for lunch?" Yu Yuti paused, then smiled. "Our bank doesn't handle corporate transactions during lunch hours, but for personal business, there are staff on duty at the counters." "Great. I'd like to deposit some money. Could you help me with that?" Yu Yuti froze, looking at him in surprise before laughing. "Hey, old classmate, I was just joking earlier. Don't take it seriously." Fong Jian chuckled. "Money's money wherever it's deposited. I used to bank with China merchants, but they never gave me any perks. Better to benefit an old classmate than some stranger." Yu Yuti considered it for a moment. "Alright, come on over. I'll help you with it." Though she didn't think Fong Jian could help her much. After all, we're talking about a 3 million yuan shortfall. But refusing his offer after he'd shown such goodwill would make her seem ungrateful. Soon, the two of them re-entered the bank. Banks now offered a wide array of services, and even personal banking encompassed numerous categories. Those who actually deposit or withdraw money at the counter. It wasn't that they didn't exist, but generally speaking, those were handled at community branch banks. Few people came to the main branch for cash transactions. Yu Yuti led him around a corner and asked, "Do you have an ICBC card?" "No." "Did you bring your ID?" Fong Jian reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim ID holder. As for a wallet, ever since electronic payments became commonplace, he rarely carried cash on him. Yu Yuti didn't lead him to the counter but instead walked to a desk in the lobby. Because the card activation process was rather complicated, dedicated staff handled it here to avoid disrupting regular customers. With her assistance, the card was opened quickly. The young woman handling the application was in her 20s. She and Yu Yuti were clearly acquainted, addressing her warmly as Sisu with every word. After completing the card application, the young woman said, "Mr. Fong, your card is ready. Is there anything else I can assist you with today?" Fong Jian thought for a moment and replied, "I recall you offer money transfers here, correct?" "Certainly. What about transfers from other banks?" "Transfers from other banks incur a certain fee." "How much?" 2 yuan per transaction. Fong Jian responded with a nod, reaching out his hand toward Yu Yuti. "Give me the money." "What?" Yu Yuti looked utterly puzzled. Fong Jian replied matter-of-factly, "I'm bringing you deposits. I can't exactly pay the transfer fee myself, can I? 2 yuan. Hurry up. Yu Yudi was at a loss for words, while the young girl couldn't help but laugh out loud. Realizing her mistake, she quickly turned away, though suppressing her laughter proved difficult. Yu Yudi slapped Fang Jian's hand away, scolding him with a laugh. Fang Jian, stop joking around, okay? Fang Jian withdrew his hand and muttered, bitch. His voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough for both women to hear clearly. Yu Yudi pressed her hand to her forehead, feeling a pang of regret. How had Fang Jian changed so much from the person she remembered? As for the girl, her lively eyes darted back and forth between Fang Jian and Yu Yudi, her little mind lost in its own thoughts. Fang Jian reached into his wallet, pulled out the business card, and handed it over. Ma'am, could you please process this transfer for me? Thank you. The girl accepted it, maintaining a professional smile. Mr. Fang, how much would you like to transfer? 10 million. Ha? The girl looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. Yu Yudi also froze, her expression turning slightly strange. My card shouldn't have a limit. Go ahead and process it, Fang Jian urged. The girl quickly composed herself and replied, certainly, sir. In reality, handling transactions involving several million yuan was commonplace at the bank. But no matter how one looked at this Mr. Fang, he didn't seem like the type who could casually pull out 10 million yuan. Still, anyone working here possessed basic professional competence. Soon, the paperwork was completed, and the 10 million yuan transfer was processed. Fang Jian continued, put it in a 3-year fixed deposit. The interest rate is higher. Yu Yudi rolled her eyes. Damn it, someone who could casually pull out 10 million yuan like that, would they really care about such a small amount of interest? The young woman thought for a moment before replying with surprising earnestness, Mr. Fang, we actually have dedicated financial advisors here who can offer higher rates than standard large deposits. Fang Jian smiled. A financial advisor? Who? The girl pointed beside her and said, Sister Yu is a financial expert. You can definitely consult her. Yu Yudi gently tapped the girl on the head. Enough chatter. He doesn't care about this small amount. Just set up a 3-year fixed deposit. Oh, okay. The young woman quickly completed the paperwork, though she couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Sis Yu, I'm doing you a favor here. You really don't know a good deed when you see one. Chapter 212, 10,000 bitcoins, take it or leave it. After completing the paperwork, they stepped outside the bank. Yu Yudi's expression turned peculiar. She suddenly asked, Fang Jian, doesn't China Merchants Bank have a customer service manager? Guest manager? What's that? Yu Yudi sighed. Stop joking around, will you? Fang Jian laughed heartily. Alright, no more jokes. Actually, after I deposited the money, someone did call me claiming to be from the bank. But I kept saying I was driving or in a meeting, then hung up. Why? It's a waste of time, Fang Jian shrugged. I'm not interested in buying funds or anything like that. Why should I bother with them? But leaving so much money in the bank will lose value. Fang Jian looked at her suspiciously. Hey, Yu Yudi, are you bank staff? Is it really okay to badmouth the bank like that? Yu Yudi grew annoyed. I'm only looking out for you. Fang Jian thought for a moment. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll go withdraw the money right now. Yu Yudi was speechless for a moment. Then, seeing the smug grin on Fang Jian's face, she realized he was still joking. Sighing, Yu Yudi suddenly said, alright, let's not talk about this anymore. She had intended to probe Fang Jian's financial situation, to see how much money he still had in his investment account. If she could get her hands on it to manage, it would be far better than leaving it in a savings account. Seeing how casually he'd transferred 10 million earlier, she knew this old classmate's financial depth was likely unfathomable. Moreover, depositing such a large sum without any conditions attached, simply locking it away for 3 years. Such a person couldn't be called foolish. It simply meant that this sum of money was nothing to him. Yet when she tried to engage him in conversation, he kept dodging the topic. Yu Yudi understood. After all, when old classmates reunite, you treat them to a nice meal. Having them deposit 10 million to fulfill the task was already the height of generosity. To ask for more would be downright annoying. Perhaps the rest of Fang Jian's money was needed for other purposes? Yet she didn't know that for Fang Jian now, money had lost much of its meaning. He'd just been in a good mood when he ran into his old classmate and decided to crack a few jokes. After all, Yu Yudi had been the class beauty back in the day. If Yu Yudi really put on a serious face and asked a few more questions, he wouldn't mind transferring all his money over. Fang Jian, do you remember Gong Ningxin? Yu Yudi asked softly. Of course I remember her, the pretty one, Fang Jian replied casually. In any class, ordinary people would naturally make up the majority. But there were always a few who stood out. Yu Yudi was one, Gong Ningxin was another, and of course, Zhan Tao was definitely one. As for Fang Jian, back in high school, he was truly just a nobody. Gong Ningxin is coming back next week. She wants to catch up with everyone. Are you free? Yu Yudi asked. Fang Jian replied in surprise, really? I don't recall anyone mentioning it in the class group chat. Yu Yudi smiled faintly. She's only coming back for 3 days before heading to Shanghai, so she's just inviting a few people for a small gathering. Fang Jian immediately understood. This small group must be the few classmates who've done well for themselves. If he hadn't casually pulled out 10 million today, Yu Yuti probably wouldn't have invited him either. The thought made Fang Jian feel much less invested. We'll see about it then. I might be away for a while. Hearing Fang Jian decline without hesitation, Yu Yuti was somewhat surprised. Fang Jian suddenly turned his head, glancing inside the bank. There, a figure was watching them intently. Old classmate, who's that? Yu Yuti glanced over and whispered, a section chief from our credit department. Pretty annoying. Fang Jian exclaimed in surprise, you're from the credit department? Yes, didn't I tell you? Yu Yuti seemed surprised. Fang Jian inwardly scoffed, at your age, you don't seem to have Alzheimer's. How could you forget whether I mentioned it or not? Turning up the corners of his mouth slightly, Fang Jian said, you're in the credit department, why are you soliciting deposits? Yu Yuti blinked her large eyes in confusion. Even the officially staffed security guards in the vault have deposit quotas. Why wouldn't we in the credit department need to solicit deposits? Hearing this, Fang Jian thought, oh my, that actually makes sense. Alright, look, your supervisor is watching you. Why aren't you working? Fang Jian urged. But Yu Yuti replied softly, with a big client like you here, even if I skip work, no one will say a word. Fang Jian chuckled, thinking to himself. Wasn't this like shooting herself in the foot? Oh, by the way, old classmate, how come you didn't go to Zhan Tao's wedding? Yu Yuti froze, her gaze toward Fang Jian taking on a peculiar edge. You're Zhan Tao's best friend. Didn't you know he only invited male classmates to his wedding? Fang Jian thought about it, that was indeed the case. That day, several of their college and high school classmates had come. But it seemed like they were all guys, not a single woman in sight. Fang Jian hadn't noticed before, but hearing Yu Yuti mention it, he realized it was true. I get it now. That guy must be feeling guilty. Throughout high school and college, Fang Jian had always been a straight-laced guy. But Zhan Tao was different. He came from a privileged background, was wealthy, and was a star athlete. Ever since high school, he'd been involved in ambiguous relationships with girls. It seems some rumors weren't entirely unfounded after all. Though Fang Jian was Zhan Tao's closest friend, they'd never discussed such matters. It was a kind of unspoken understanding between brothers. Of course, the root cause was simply that Fang Jian didn't have the money, he couldn't afford to play that game. Nodding, Fang Jian said, alright, old friend. I've kept you long enough today. I've got things to do, so I'll head out now. Next time, dinner's on me. Waving goodbye, Fang Jian turned and walked away. Even as he walked away, he could still feel that pair of burning eyes fixed on his back. In truth, from Yu Yuti's attitude, Fang Jian could tell that if he invited her to dinner, she would definitely accept. But then again, 10 years ago, with his current abilities and financial means, he would have pursued her. But now, he didn't want to get involved so easily. At her age, most women were married. Having 2 consecutive meals with a married woman would definitely be awkward. And if she wasn't married, or had divorced, well, that would be even more awkward. It was strange, but among Fang Jian's circle of friends, there was a peculiar pattern. Those classmates who were average-looking tended to marry earlier. And after marriage, regardless of their family circumstances or how their lives turned out, very few of them ended up divorced. But those stunningly beautiful girls who were the center of attention in school? They tended to marry later, and their divorce rates were significantly higher than the former group. Shaking his head, Fang Jian pushed these thoughts aside and headed home. That night, he collapsed into bed. Suddenly sensing someone approach, he opened his eyes to find his father standing there. He tapped his forehead lightly and said, Dad, I forgot about the 500 billion. I'll burn it for you tomorrow. His father chuckled softly. Son, don't push yourself. I know you don't have much money left, right? Fang Jian protested, how could that be? His father tilted his head back and said, you only tell me the good news, not the bad. You think I don't know? Watching his father play along with the charade, Fang Jian could only sigh in exasperation. His father patted his son on the shoulder and said, I found another source of income for you today. It should help you make a little profit. What? Son, have you heard of Bitcoin? Bitcoin? Fang Jian's eyes widened. He hadn't just heard of it, it was practically a household name. Someone has 10,000 bitcoins and is willing to sell them to you at 13,000 yuan each. Interested? Chapter 213, 10,800 bitcoins, take your time selling them. 10,000 bitcoins? Even though Fang Jian was already quite wealthy now, and the total value of his assets undoubtedly exceeded that of 10,000 bitcoins, he still felt his breathing become erratic upon hearing those words. How much is a bitcoin worth these days? It seems to be over $10,000 each. So what would 10,000 bitcoins be worth? Fang Jian realized he'd stumbled upon another depression painting, one he could liquidate at any moment. Dad, how could this guy have so many bitcoins? How should I know? But here, he definitely can't lie. Just tell me, is this price worth it? Worth it. Absolutely worth it, Fang Jian replied without hesitation. At 13,000 yuan per Bitcoin, it certainly wasn't cheap. But if you switch the currency to Joss paper, damn it, even at 100 million yuan per Bitcoin, I'd still trade. How does he give it to me? Fang Jian asked in a low voice. He said there's a safe deposit box at HSBC in Hong Kong City. With the account number and password, you can open it. Inside is a USB drive. Fang Jian nodded firmly. All right, bring him here. I'll make the exchange. Old man waved his hand, and a tall, slender man stepped into the circle from outside. He was a mixed-race man. Fang Jian didn't know his background, nor did he care to. Their relationship was purely transactional. Soon, the man transmitted a segment of memory. Moments later, the man departed. Old man hesitated before saying, "Son, once this batch of Bitcoin sells, remember to burn me some Joss paper. Otherwise, all this coming and going day after day is really unsettling." Truthfully, mere fluctuations wouldn't have been so troubling. The problem was, this kid was way too demanding. He was always asking people to teach him things, and each lesson cost him a fortune. That's a whopping 365 million a day for his superpower. Even if we had mountains of gold and silver at home, we couldn't withstand such extravagance. Fang Jian nodded repeatedly, agreeing to the arrangement. His father waved his hand, and Fang Jian instantly felt that intense sensation of falling through the air once more. Waking up, Fang Jian leapt from his bed. The first thing he did was burn 500 billion yuan before his father's portrait. Then he headed to the park for a workout and called Luan Wani. "I'm heading to Hong Kong tomorrow. Want to come along?" "No way," Luan Wani replied with a laugh. "We just got back from Europe and I can't take that much time off. Besides, what's there to do in Hong Kong City now? Are you going shopping?" Fang Jian chuckled, changed the subject, chatted casually for a moment, then hung up. Right, he'd completely forgotten that Luan Wani had a job. Though being a music teacher at the school was mostly just a token position. She couldn't exactly take days off left and right. That would reflect poorly on her. Of course, Fang Jian was all for women having careers. If a woman spent her days at home doing nothing, or lived off mahjong and shopping, then her entire life would be reduced to being nothing more than a pretty face. Therefore, even though he currently had enough money to support her for 100 lifetimes, Fang Jian wouldn't object to her becoming a teacher. He went online and looked up Bitcoin. Fang Jian frowned slightly, surprised to see Bitcoin had surged again. From under $14,000, it had soared to a peak of $19,000, though it had since fallen below $17,000. But even at this price point, the potential profits were enormous. The total value of the cryptocurrency market had now reached $2 trillion, with Bitcoin accounting for half of that. Fang Jian looked up that the global supply of Bitcoin would remain capped at around 21 million coins. This number cannot be increased. While the current high price is undoubtedly influenced by speculation to some extent, with the ongoing devaluation of fiat currencies, whether the value of this asset will rise or fall in the future is truly hard to say. Even if everyone is bearish and online experts keep shouting, Bitcoin's heyday is over, it's about to collapse. But such claims were already being loudly debated a full decade ago. Back then, Bitcoin wasn't even worth $1,000. It's like how everyone was saying housing prices would crash 10 years ago. But what actually happened? Anyone who believed that would have been truly unlucky for life. Those who didn't buy property back then, even pooling 6 family members' savings, now might not even scrape together enough for a down payment. But for someone like Fang Jian, he'd rather not touch any financial products. If he had money, he'd naturally want to keep it safe. He glanced at his passport, or rather, his Hong Kong and Macau travel permit. When John Tao helped him with his passport and visa last time, he'd arranged this one too. So he booked tickets on his phone first to Shenzhen, then straight across the border to Hong Kong. 20 years ago, Hong Kong held an aura of mystery and sophistication in the hearts of mainland Chinese. But today, 20 years later, Hong Kong City had become just another place where residents of Pengcheng and nearby areas could buy foreign goods more cheaply. If it weren't for that Bitcoin password key being in Hong Kong City, Fang Jian wouldn't have had any interest in going there at all. After purchasing his ticket, Fang Jian bid farewell to John Tao and boarded the flight. There were still many flights from Ningbo to Shenzhen. That same afternoon, Fang Jian arrived in Pengcheng. While clearing customs, he bought a Hong Kong SIM card. Although he had never been to Hong Kong before, there were so many online guides now that he could easily find a few articles to get a general idea. Besides, all he needed to know was how to clear customs. He wasn't planning to sightsee. The border inspection was remarkably straightforward. In Fang Jian's estimation, it was far quicker than customs checks in Europe. Once in Hong Kong, Fang Jian naturally treated himself well. He booked a room at the Hong Kong New World Harbourview Hotel, priced at over 9,000 per night. While the hotel wasn't as renowned on the mainland as the Peninsula Hotel, its location on the edge of Victoria Harbour offered breathtaking panoramic views of the city from its upper floors. However, after staying one night, Fang Jian didn't find the so-called panoramic view of Victoria particularly impressive. Compared to mainland infrastructure, Hong Kong truly had little to offer in terms of superiority. The next morning, Fang Jian arrived at HSBC. Using his account and password, he successfully located the safe deposit box and retrieved the USB drive. It wasn't just a USB drive, there was also a CD. That was because the guy feared the files might get damaged, so he deliberately backed them up on 2 different media. It must be said, this man was indeed extremely cautious. Fang Jian opened an account at HSBC, activated international services, and then left. Hong Kong's service industry and retail sector were extremely developed. Fang Jian found a shopping mall and purchased an Apple computer. Back at the hotel, he plugged in the USB drive. Sure enough, it contained over 10,000, more than 18,000 bitcoins. The other party had traded with him for 10,000 bitcoins, treating the rest as a gift. Truly a generous soul. Fang Jian decided he'd ask for a higher price when he got back. 15,000 ghost money per coin would be fair, he couldn't let an honest man lose out. After some setup, Fang Jian connected to the foreign internet. Bitcoin transactions were illegal within China. However, conducting online transactions in Hong Kong posed no issues whatsoever. The only problem was that Fang Jian held an enormous amount of Bitcoin. If he dumped it all at once. Looking at Bitcoin's daily trading volume, it consistently exceeded $6 billion. So selling off a small portion should be fine, right? After pondering, Fang Jian sold off 100. Soon, over $1.6 million landed in his HSBC account. Converted, that amounted to 10 million yuan. And he didn't have to pay any taxes. Now looking at the remaining 10,700 plus bitcoins. Damn it, even if he sold 100 every day, it would take 107 days. Sigh, why is it so damn hard to make a little money? Chapter 214, The Hong Kong Female Coach. Now that he was in Hong Kong, Fang Jian naturally planned to stay for a few days. After all, there was nothing urgent back in Yongchang. That afternoon, he visited the famous Hong Kong racecourse, watched a few horse races. He placed a few bets while he was there. The results left him rather disappointed. He didn't win a single cent, losing all 100 Hong Kong dollars. So Fang Jian decided he'd never gamble on horses again. When reading Hong Kong travel guides, people often mention that taxi fares are expensive and recommend purchasing an octopus card for buses or the MTR. But for Fang Jian, taxi fares were no burden at all. After grabbing a bite near the racecourse, he hailed a cab. Once inside, he spoke in fluent English to the largest shopping mall near the New World Sea View Hotel. Beneath that hotel lay a mature neighborhood bustling with activity. Naturally, shopping malls of all levels could be found there. Fang Jian didn't bother looking it up, he simply asked the driver to take him there. The driver responded with a nod and stepped on the gas. Fang Jian glanced at him. This guy really did understand English. When they got out, Fang Jian paid the 400 Hong Kong dollar fare. The fare was 352, the rest was a tip. Although mobile payments were now common in Hong Kong, shopping malls accepted Alipay and WeChat Pay. But for this trip, Fang Jian had prepared a fair amount of Hong Kong dollar cash. After getting out, Fang Jian thought to himself, everyone says Hong Kong taxis are expensive, but it's actually not that bad. He silently calculated that his daily guaranteed income was over $1.6 million, equivalent to 10 million renminbi. To spend that much on taxis? Forget it. Entering the mall before him, Fang Jian headed straight for the men's clothing floor. He'd come empty-handed this time, bringing nothing with him. Since he planned to stay for a few days, he naturally needed to buy some replacement clothes. But when it came to buying clothes, he never cared about brands, only whether they fit well. In this mall, men's clothing brands occupied an entire floor. Yet Fang Jian managed to buy 2 complete outfits in just 15 minutes, plus a rolling suitcase. As for the money spent? For his former self, tens of thousands of yuan would have been a substantial sum. But now, it didn't even cover the tip of what he earned in a single day. Back at the hotel, Fang Jian glanced at the amenities. The hotel was fully equipped with 5 restaurants, a gym, and 4 swimming pools, one of which was an all-weather pool. Additionally, it offered a spa, beauty salon, tennis courts, sauna, and more. After pondering for a moment, he picked up the internal phone and called the front desk to book a sauna session. A technician in her 20s arrived, demonstrating quite skilled techniques. Fang Jian could sense that if he desired, he could extend the session. But after a moment's thought, he decided against it. Perhaps having money had changed his mindset. At the very least, he had become more discerning and no longer felt drawn to people of that social standing. The masseuse's technique was competent, but her touch was too light. Fang Jian knew this was because his muscles were too hard from martial arts training, making it difficult for her to apply pressure. So even though she was giving it her all, drenched in sweat, the results were still underwhelming. Still, before she left, Fang Jian tipped her 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. The technician's eyes lit up with delight, turning into little hearts. Glancing over the menu again, Fang Jian decided to go swimming. Since she couldn't work the knots out, he'd burn off the tension himself. At the pool, he bought a pair of men's swim trunks. As he stepped out wearing his new swim trunks, Fang Jian realized he had become the center of attention for many people. There was no denying it, his physique, honed through martial arts training and mastery of internal energy, was nothing short of perfect. Moreover, the absence of any flab made it look exceptionally pleasing to the eye. Fang Jian had already noticed this when he used to run on the treadmill at the gym. The pool area was quite crowded, with many people conversing in Cantonese. It seemed the pool was open to the public, attracting nearby residents and office workers alike for exercise and recreation. Once in the pool, Fang Jian began swimming. He didn't know much about swimming and only knew one stroke, the breaststroke. Swimming was an excellent form of exercise, engaging muscles throughout the entire body. However, it's also an extremely physically demanding activity. This was especially true for a beginner like Fang Jian. After swimming several laps, Fang Jian noticed a mermaid had passed by him multiple times. The pool was divided into several lanes, and generally, people preferred swimming in the less crowded lanes for convenience. Of course, the number of swimmers is always greater than the number of lanes. Therefore, it wasn't unusual for a few people to share a single lane. But constantly darting in front of me like that? That's just bullying. Fang Jian tried to pick up his pace, but he quickly realized he hadn't mastered swimming yet. Moreover, the other swimmer was using the freestyle stroke, whose speed far surpassed his own breaststroke. After one lap, disheartened, Fang Jian considered switching lanes. But just then, the mermaid had also finished her lap and approached the pool edge. She lifted her head, brushed the water from her face, and smiled, saying, "Hey, hello." Fang Jian glanced at her. Her features were quite delicate, and her figure, well, that went without saying. Having overtaken him several times right in front of him, he'd gotten a clear look. This woman was probably around 25 years old, easily a 75 out of 100 in looks. A 75 was actually above average. To score 75 in a setting like the pool meant that with makeup, she could easily reach an 80. Seeing Fang Jian didn't respond, she added in English. Fang Jian smiled faintly and replied in Chinese, "Hello." "Oh, so you understand? You must be from mainland China." Fang Jian raised his eyebrows slightly. "Yes. Are you here for work, or?" Fang Jian chuckled, "Can't I be here for vacation?" The girl chuckled, "Tourists rarely come to the hotel to swim, you know." Fang Jian glanced at her, thinking to himself. Was this her hitting on him? "May I ask what brings you here?" Fang Jian inquired. The girl smiled. "I was wondering if you might need a swimming instructor." Swimming instructor? Fang Jian froze. He never imagined he'd encounter something like this. "Yes. Judging by your physique, you seem like someone who enjoys sports." The girl's gaze swept over Fang Jian's body. Her cheeks flushed slightly as she continued, "But your swimming skills are a bit average. If you'd like to learn, I could teach you." Fang Jian's mouth twitched slightly. "Average? You're flattering me." His breaststroke skills were learned as a child. After all these years of neglect, even a fool could tell how good he was. "You're a swimming instructor?" Fang Jian asked. The girl smiled. "I'm a body management instructor at a nearby training center, and I moonlight as a swimming coach." Fang Jian chuckled, "I bet a lot of people want you as their swimming coach." Her eyebrows shot up. "If it were just anyone, I wouldn't bother coaching them, let alone as a swimming instructor." Fang Jian admitted that whether she was telling the truth or not, it still sounded pretty flattering. "Alright, so what are your rates?" "Whatever you think is fair," the girl laughed. "I told you it's just a side gig. Maybe I'm not that great at teaching, and you won't hire me again tomorrow." This time, Fang Jian genuinely laughed. This girl was quite interesting. If this were in Ningbo, Fang Jian probably wouldn't have dared to engage her. But in other cities, men naturally become much bolder. "Alright, then teach me right now." "Alright, your breaststroke form is all wrong." Chapter 215, Fancy going to the bar? For a full 2 hours, Fang Jian and this woman stayed in the pool. After exchanging names, the woman introduced herself as Mi Jiayan, a local from Hongcheng who lives nearby. She proudly introduced herself, mentioning her family owned a 1,000-square-foot mansion. Fang Jian froze. What kind of measurement unit was that? Still, he nodded impassively. 1,000? Could this be a super-rich second-generation heir? After all, the apartment he'd bought in Yongchang was only a little over 100 square meters. Mi Jiayan was quite impressed by Fang Jian's learning speed. This was undoubtedly due to his exceptional natural coordination. Truth be told, anyone blessed with Fang Jian's physical gifts would pick up anything quickly. 2 hours later, they chatted and laughed their way to the pool. Fang Jian said, "Jiayan, to thank you for teaching me to swim, I'd like to treat you to dinner. Would that be okay?" Mi Jiayan removed her swim cap, tilting her head back as her long hair cascaded down, making her appear even more alluring. "Sure. Let's rinse off first, then I'll wait for you outside." Fang Jian desperately wanted to say, "I have a room at the hotel. We could shower there." But he wasn't quite that bold. After a moment's thought, he decided against it. After a quick shower in the changing room, Fang Jian changed into a fresh set of clothes and stepped outside. Glancing around, he didn't see Mi Jiayan anywhere. Knowing girls take their time showering, he sat down. Then he looked up what a 1,000-square-foot mansion was. Damn it. So in Hong Kong City, a so-called 1,000-square-foot mansion was actually just a 90-square-meter apartment. A place like that. Fang Jian simply couldn't associate it with the word mansion. He waited a full 20 minutes before Mi Jiayan finally arrived. Carrying a bag, she smiled. How long have you been waiting? Fang Jian smiled back. I just stepped out a little while ago. Mi Jiayan's smile was sly as a fox, clearly seeing through his excuse. Alright then, where should we go for dinner? You know this area better, so you pick the place, Fang Jian suggested. Or, we could just eat at the hotel. From what I've read, the food here should be decent. Mi Jiayan's gaze turned slightly strange. Here? Oh, I'm not about to be taken for a ride. Even if the food here was top-notch, it wouldn't be a local's first choice. It was like Fang Jian living in Ningbo. He'd eaten at countless roadside stalls, but the number of times he'd dined at a 5-star hotel could be counted on one hand. Unless it's for a wedding banquet or formal reception, who would go there for no reason? Fang Jian chuckled. By the way, you mentioned you have WeChat. Let's connect first. Sure. Mi Jiayan casually pulled out her phone, and the two added each other on WeChat. WeChat had become ubiquitous in Hongcheng. Almost every shop displayed WeChat payment QR codes. This showed how mainland China's influence had permeated every aspect of life here. Glancing at her profile picture and nickname, he scrolled through her Moments feed. Sure enough, she worked in body management. Fang Jian casually sent a transfer of 8,888 yuan. Mi Jiayan froze, asking, "What are you doing?" Fang Jian chuckled. You said you'd teach me to swim, but one day isn't enough. Or were you planning to teach me for just one day? Mi Jiayan burst out laughing. Alright then, I won't hold back. She happily tapped to accept the transfer. Transfers on WeChat are denominated in Chinese yuan. 8,888 renminbi equaled roughly 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. Mi Jiayan's income placed her above average in Hong Kong, though not among the city's highest earners. She earned between 25,000 Hong Kong dollars and 30,000 Hong Kong dollars monthly. Swimming this afternoon had unexpectedly earned her a third of her monthly income as extra cash. Of course, she was thrilled. Though it wasn't a full day's pay, chatting with this man wasn't unpleasant at all. She was quite happy to oblige. Fang Jian continued, I booked a room at the hotel. You can drop your things off there, and then we can go out to eat. Mi Jiayan paused, hesitating. Fang Jian smiled. Of course, you could also drop your things off at home and we could meet up later. Mi Jiayan thought for a moment and said, that would be too much trouble. I'll just leave them at your place for now. They arrived at the hotel's 25th floor. Upon entering the room, Mi Jiayan walked to the window. Gazing out at the panoramic view of Victoria Harbor from the Ocean View Suite, her breathing seemed to quicken. Fang Jian, this is a sea view room, right? Yes. How much is it per night? Over 9,000, Fang Jian replied casually. Under 10,000. Mi Jiayan's lips twitched slightly. Not 10,000? You mean RMB, right? Which means, after working my ass off for a whole month, I could only afford 2 nights here. In that moment, Mi Jiayan suddenly felt that the job she usually took pride in didn't seem so appealing anymore. Stepping out of the room, Mi Jiayan suddenly said, Mr. Fang, let's just eat at the hotel. Fang Jian chuckled, why so formal all of a sudden? Just call me by my first name. Mi Jiayan gave an awkward laugh and said, alright. Fang Jian added, changed your mind? I thought you were going to introduce me to some specialty dishes. Mi Jiayan licked her lips and replied, we can try the specialty dishes anytime, but I rarely get the chance to taste the food here. Fang Jian nodded slightly. Alright, let's eat here then. What would you like? I hear there are 4 different restaurants here. Fang Jian wasn't picky about food as long as it filled his stomach, he was satisfied. Of course, he preferred meat dishes above all else. As for seafood, that stuff was all about freshness, but it was hard to fill up on. Mi Jiayan chose a French restaurant. Fang Jian glanced at the menu and ordered several dishes. No-choice French cuisine was one of the most complicated in the world, with countless rules and limited portions. Fang Jian had suffered a few times during his time in Paris. If it weren't for accompanying Mi Jiayan, he'd never set foot in a French restaurant again. Mi Jiayan was quite curious about why Fang Jian ordered so many dishes. But when the dishes arrived and she shared the meal with him, she finally understood why he had ordered so much. An hour later, they finally finished the drawn-out dinner. Mi Jiayan's eyes sparkled. Fang, wanna hit up a bar? A bar? Yes, Mi Jiayan said, her cheeks flushing slightly. Hongqing's night market is the most captivating in the world. You should experience it. Sure, Fang Jian replied without hesitation. True to her roots as a local, Mi Jiayan knew her way around here like the back of her hand. She led Fang Jian to a bar. Not the kind found in hotels, but a bustling, noisy establishment. The moment they stepped inside, the roar of voices filled their ears. Mi Jiayan guided Fang Jian through the crowd and soon found an unoccupied small bar counter. It was indeed small, barely fitting 2 to 4 people. What would you like to drink? It's on me, Mi Jiayan said, sounding a bit excited. Fang Jian smiled faintly and replied, my treat. He then asked the bartender for a Hennessy Richard, 1 glass. It certainly wasn't the most expensive drink on the menu, but it was far from cheap. Typically, those who ordered such drinks would either be seated in private rooms or at least in booths. Two people ordering a Hennessy Richard costing over 10,000 yuan at a small bar counter was indeed quite rare. Soon, a host approached. After inquiring, he guided them to a booth. Fang Jian thought the host was quite competent and good at handling people, so he added him on WeChat. Mi Jiayan sighed and remarked, "I've been here so many times, but this is the first time I've ever received this kind of treatment. A bottle like this cost as much as the average monthly salary in Hong Kong." Mi Jiayan would never dream of drinking it. Chapter 216, Playing the Big Spender. Fang Jian opened it and poured a little for each of them. "Sprite or Coke?" "I'll have the original flavor." "Plain?" Fang Jian paused slightly. It wasn't that he was stingy with the liquor, it was just plain liquor. Wasn't she afraid of getting drunk? He glanced at her and chuckled softly, deciding not to press the matter. The bar soon filled with lively chatter. This bar was a classic Hong Kong Marlin-style establishment. The decor was beautiful, elegant, and distinctive, with a strong European or American style. It also featured its own live band, and in one corner, a dartboard area where some patrons were playing. Noticing Fang Jian glance over from afar, Mi Jiayan sidled up, tugging his sleeve and teasing, "Hey, wanna give it a shot?" Fang Jian chuckled silently. Though he'd never played darts before, he'd practiced throwing projectiles under Master Li's guidance. Combined with his current body's enhanced coordination from mastering the art of internal force, when it came to darts, he wouldn't claim pinpoint accuracy, but his aim should easily outclass most people. So, he really didn't have much interest in this. By now, the band had started their performance. The singer, microphone in hand, was belting out songs at the top of his lungs on stage. The higher his voice soared, the more the crowd grew excited and exhilarated. Mi Jiayan swayed back and forth, swaying her hips as she drank. After one song, Mi Jiayan exclaimed, "How about it? Is it lit? Is that it?" Fang Jian desperately wanted to ask, could such a song really get people fired up? To be honest, this singer did have some talent. But the problem was, the one collaborating with Fang Jian at La Scala was none other than world-class tenor Tobias Clifford. With such a gem preceding him, Fang Jian simply couldn't appreciate it. Of course, in a setting like this bar, it was more than enough to excite the average person. Seeing Fang Jian's impassive expression, Mi Jiayan seemed to lose interest. She raised her glass and gave a distant toast. Fang Jian clinked glasses with her before taking a sip. Mi Jiayan wanted to drink straight liquor, but Fang Jian wasn't going to join her. He opted for a mixed drink with ice. That way, he wouldn't get drunk so easily. Jiayan. Suddenly, a group emerged from the crowd, 4 young women and 2 men. They appeared to be around Mi Jiayan's age. Mi Jiayan stood up, exchanged a few words with them, then looked at Fang Jian with a hint of awkwardness. Fang Jian smiled. "Your friends? They're all my colleagues. We often come here to hang out. Why not invite them to join us?" Fang Jian suggested with a smile. Before Mi Jiayan could speak, the girl who had greeted him first burst out laughing. "Thanks, handsome." She walked over, sat beside Fang Jian, and extended her hand. "My name is Liao Naimei. What's your name, handsome?" Fang Jian casually shook her hand and said, "Call me Brother Fang." "Sure thing, Brother Fang." Liao Naimei actively invited everyone to sit down. Though Mi Jiayan's expression darkened slightly, she could do nothing about it. Fang Jian pulled out his phone, messaged the newly added marketing rep on WeChat, and transferred him some money. Within just 10 minutes, the marketer arrived with 2 assistants, delivering 10 bottles of liquor and a selection of beverages. Then, in front of everyone, they lit 2 rounds of fireworks. Surrounding booths and the bar counter turned their attention to them, while Liao Naimei and the others cheered excitedly. The marketer approached Fang Jian and whispered, "Boss, anything else you need?" Fang Jian waved him off. "That's all. I'll call you if I need anything." The marketer hesitated before suggesting, "Bro, if you find it too noisy here, I can arrange a private room for you. You can even sing in there." Fang Jian considered it, then glanced at Mi Jiayan, who looked a bit downcast beside him. He smiled and said, "Reserve one for me." "Sure thing, boss." The marketer smiled and walked away, pulling someone aside for a quick whisper. Fang Jian noticed his actions and found it rather amusing. This promoter certainly wasn't plotting robbery or murder. He was likely just having someone keep an eye on the place, ready to intervene if needed. Though Fang Jian didn't need it, being treated with such attentiveness did bring him some satisfaction. Mi Jiayan stepped forward and whispered in Fang Jian's ear, "What kind of wine is this?" Fang Jian replied in surprise, "Don't you come here often? How come you don't even recognize the wines?" Mi Jiayan replied irritably, "When we come here, we just order some beer. Why would we bother with all this fancy stuff?" Fang Jian chuckled, "What's wrong? Don't you like it?" Mi Jiayan's cheeks flushed, whether from the alcohol or her emotions, she couldn't tell. She shook her head and said, "I'm very happy." Just then, Liao Naimei joined them, calling out, "Brother Fang, what kind of drinks are these?" The music was loud here, and speaking softly would indeed make it hard to hear. But since even she didn't know, Fang Jian finally realized Mi Jiayan hadn't been lying. Shaking his head, Fang Jian chuckled, "I don't know either." "What? You ordered the drinks and don't know what they are?" I transferred him 200,000 yuan and told him we had 8 people here, asking him to pair some drinks for us. Wow. Stars twinkled in Liao Naimei's eyes. She turned and repeated the story to her companions. An immediate chorus of gasps erupted. Earlier, when those two men had just sat down, they eyed Fang Jian from head to toe with a hint of scrutiny. But now, they both kept their heads bowed and eyes lowered, addressing him respectfully as Brother Fang, not daring to make the slightest provocative move. Fang Jian silently marveled to himself. Financial clout truly was a form of power. Often, it held its own against any supernatural ability. In this setting and atmosphere, everyone drank freely. Soon, everyone was feeling a bit tipsy. Fang Jian noticed that after Liao Naimei and the others sat down, Ni Jiayan no longer drank straight liquor. Instead, she followed the others' example, adding ice and mixers to her drinks. As the night deepened, the bar grew increasingly lively. In front of the band, a small dance floor had formed. Crowds pressed together, bodies swaying and jostling like a swarm of demons and spirits. Fang, let's go dance, Liao Naimei whispered in Fang Jian's ear. Fang Jian chuckled, too crowded for my taste. You guys go ahead. Everyone at this booth except Fang Jian had already gone at least twice. Even Ni Jiayan was no exception. It had to be said, dancing out there was a great way to unwind. Liao Naimei shook her head. Brother Fang, if you're not going, I don't feel like going either. Her eyes twinkled mischievously. Brother Fang, do you like singing? A little. Next time we get the chance, I'll treat you to a song, Liao Naimei said with a smile. Both me and Jiayan are pretty good singers. Fang Jian turned to look at Ni Jiayan. Her cheeks were flushed bright red from drinking too much and bouncing around for so long. Catching his gaze, she nodded vigorously. I sing better than her. Liao Naimei exclaimed, Bull. Let's have a sing-off. Fang Jian burst into laughter, wrapping an arm around each of their waists. Want to sing? Easy. He tightened his grip slightly, and the two girls immediately sat down. Their only sensation was the sheer strength behind his grip. Fang Jian picked up his phone, transferred 200,000 yuan to the marketing manager, and left a message. Book a private room. Same drinks as before. Got it, boss. Soon, the marketing rep arrived and led the three of them to a private room on the second floor. As for the booth? Of course it was reserved, waiting for those guests to return and enjoy it at their leisure. Upon entering the private room, they saw several identical bottles of liquor inside. Liao Naimei let out a shriek. Brother Fang, you're amazing. Ni Jiayan, though a bit tipsy, was still lucid. She tugged at Fang Jian's sleeve and said, Isn't this a bit much? Fang Jian chuckled, if you can't finish it, save it for later. Sip it slowly. He silently rejoiced inside. Thankfully, he'd activated WeBank last time and raised his daily transfer limit to 500,000 yuan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to transfer anything today. Chapter 217, Victoria's Morning. Here, pick whatever song you want. Fang Jian pointed at the touchscreen. Liao Naimei rushed over and selected Kiss Everywhere. It was an old song by Miriam Young, beloved for its upbeat rhythm, catchy melody, and memorable lyrics. Fang Jian shook his head silently. Just as he'd expected, he shouldn't have gotten his hopes up. Liao Naimei's singing was far worse than that bar singer's. She was merely amateurish, her diction was sloppy, and she relied on sheer force to hit the high notes. But observing Ni Jiayan's expression, Fang Jian noticed she seemed somewhat nervous. Seriously? Singing like that, what the hell are you nervous about? Even without proper breath control, I could sing better than her. When Liao Naimei finished singing, she raised an eyebrow and looked at Ni Jiayan smugly. Fang Jian's lips curled into a faint, ambiguous smile. He couldn't understand why this person was so utterly lacking in self-awareness. Ni Jiayan stepped forward and selected the song Walk Away gracefully. As the music began and Ni Jiayan opened her mouth to sing, Fang Jian was stunned. His hand had already risen, ready to applaud her. But now, he couldn't bring himself to clap. Silently, he picked up a bottle of liquor, poured himself a glass, and took a sip. He finally understood why Liao Naimei had been so arrogant. Because Ni Jiayan's singing was practically on par with hers, a perfect match. He couldn't fathom why these two were so confident, even claiming they sang well. In truth, many singers who get carried away in KTV rooms sound quite good to ordinary listeners. But to professional ears, their performances are riddled with flaws utterly painful to hear. This, perhaps, is the difference between professional and amateur. Never challenge someone's expertise with your amateur hobby. That's the real truth. After the song, Ni Jiayan let out a long sigh. Then, both pairs of eyes turned toward Fang Jian. Fang Jian thought for a moment before selecting a song from the playlist. Here, the songs in the playlist were somewhat outdated, nowhere near as updated as those back home. Many internet hits were simply unavailable. Still, the classic oldies were mostly present. Fang Jian studied bel canto under Pavarotti, but those trained in bel canto possess far greater breath control than ordinary singers. Once they master the techniques for performing pop songs, their delivery will certainly not be inferior to pop singers. It can be said that if an opera singer is willing to lower their standards and learn, they can easily become a pop singer. But the reverse is not necessarily true. Fang Jian had been to KTV before, though he'd always just belted out songs without much thought. Yet he still remembered the melodies and vocal styles of those tunes. So he chose Love Trap. It's an old song, and many have performed it. Plucking through the thick fog, silently searching for my way. Hoping to stumble upon your footsteps along the way. I long to see you again. Just to confess my heart's longing. Hearing this voice, both Mi Jiayan and Liao Naimei froze in place. Whether a singer is good or not, you can tell the moment they open their mouth. Although Fang Jian's Cantonese pronunciation wasn't entirely precise, it didn't diminish the infectious power of his voice in the slightest. Listening to this song, it felt as though a fire burned within both of them, threatening to ignite at any moment. I've fallen into the web of love, yet you stand outside watching. You never let go. You smile and look at me like I'm prey. My heart is already wounded. I'm caught in love's net, yet you watch from outside. Never letting go. Hate and love surge within my heart. This trap I've stumbled into. As the chorus swells, the entire song reaches its climax. The two girls were already bouncing and dancing wildly. Though the atmosphere here was nowhere near as heated as outside, they were both so excited they'd lost all sense of direction. Fang Jian finished the song and set down the microphone. Brother Fang, one more song. One more. Liao Naimei rushed forward, wrapping her arm around his without a hint of reserve. Fang Jian's eye twitched slightly, feeling a flutter of desire. His gaze shifted to Mi Jiayan, who stood nearby, pouting slightly. Fang Jian smiled faintly, discreetly withdrawing his arm and said, "Sure." He stepped forward and selected another song. Then he noticed Mi Jiayan's lips curling into a faint smile, as if she were genuinely delighted. Under the constant urging of the two girls, Fang Jian sang 10 songs in a row. When it was their turn to sing, they no longer competed over who sang better. Instead, they grabbed the microphone and belted out their hearts, letting loose completely. When Mi Jiayan went to the restroom, Liao Naimei suddenly leaned in, pulled out her phone, and said, "Brother Fang, let's connect on WeChat." Fang Jian smiled and didn't refuse. This girl's figure was slightly less impressive than Mi Jiayan's, but her looks were hardly inferior. However, Fang Jian had already made up his mind he would never pursue her. After midnight, Fang Jian glanced at the time and said with a smile, "It's getting late. Let's call it a night." Mi Jiayan leaned against Fang Jian, feeling a bit dizzy. She murmured, "I'll go back with you, to get my clothes." "All right." The two bid farewell to the others, leaving the drinks on the table as gifts for them. Liao Naimei waved at Fang Jian, batting her eyelashes with a look so alluring it seemed like a pool of water. At the hotel, Mi Jiayan waved her hand. "I'm so hot. I'm going to take a shower." Fang Jian tapped the bathrobe hanging in the bathroom and said, "Wear that." That night, everything unfolded as naturally as water flowing downhill. The next morning, Fang Jian reclined on the bed, opened his phone, and blocked Liao Naimei on WeChat. Mi Jiayan lazily drifted over, witnessed the action, and exclaimed in surprise, "Brother Fang, what are you doing?" Fang Jian smiled. "Didn't you see it all?" "But you didn't have to do that," Mi Jiayan said, sounding almost grateful. Fang Jian shook his head slightly. "I don't like girls being too forward." Mi Jiayan paused, stammering, "But Swimming's different." Fang Jian patted her gently. "Rest up, then let's grab a bite and hit the pool." He grinned. "You took my money, you've got to teach me properly." Mi Jiayan bit her lip lightly and said, "I'll go ask for permission first." While she was on the phone, Fang Jian gazed out the window. Victoria's mornings were still quite beautiful. Chapter 218, The Apartment in Hong Kong. Fang Jian stayed in Hong Kong for 3 days, selling 300 bitcoins. To his astonishment, Bitcoin hadn't fallen, it had surged another $500, breaking through the $17,000 mark once more. It seemed as though he hadn't sold his Bitcoins at all, but had instead bought them back at a higher price. If he were truly a crypto trader, the prudent move now would be to hold and watch, not continue selling. After all, this relentless cycle of bearish sentiment punctuated by small rallies and dips felt suspiciously like someone manipulating retail investors to dump their holdings while whales made massive purchases. But Fang Jian dislikes this kind of cryptocurrency manipulation. So regardless of whether the price is high or low, he would choose to gradually unload his holdings. Dumping over 10,000 bitcoins into the market in a single day would undoubtedly trigger major market volatility. After all, Bitcoin's daily trading volume is around $5.6 billion. If someone suddenly dumped 1/20th of that volume, it would inevitably trigger a massive chain reaction without buyers to support the market. However, if he sold only 100 coins per day, even at $17,000 per coin, it amounts to just $1.7 million. Compared to the overall market, that amount is negligible. Fang Jian saw this amount added to his account daily, and he had grown numb to the money. That morning, Fang Jian received a call from Tan Moyang. The German National History Museum, the British Museum in London, the Louvre Museum in France, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. After receiving Suing Han's inquiry, all 4 institutions expressed immense interest in Fang Jian's copy of Melancholia and dispatched representatives simultaneously. They were extremely eager. The Germans would arrive in 3 days and representatives from the other countries would arrive within 5 days. Therefore, Tan Moyang hoped Fang Jian could return immediately. This matter involved major international museums and could not be taken lightly. Although he was enjoying himself in Hong Kong, Fang Jian hadn't forgotten where his roots lay. He promised to return as soon as possible and hung up the phone. Mi Jiayan felt a bit uneasy and asked, "Fang, are you leaving?" "Yes, I have some matters to attend to at home." "Then, will you come back?" Fang Jian looked up in surprise, his gaze lingering on her. These past 3 days together had been truly pleasant. Although Fang Jian had bought her many things, she had never once inquired about his background. Perhaps she sensed something, so she remained restrained and proper. Fang Jian thought for a moment before asking, "Mi Jiayan, your family has a 1,000-square-foot mansion. How many people live there?" Mi Jiayan paused, then replied, "My parents, my grandparents, and my younger brother." "Where is it?" "Right here in Suanwan district, just nearby," Mi Jiayan said with a hint of pride. Before arriving, Fang Jian had already learned that Hong Kong's real estate was among the world's most expensive. The city was notorious for its cage homes. Though Fang Jian had never seen them in person, he'd at least encountered images online. So many people crammed into a cage with just one bed inside. The mere thought of such living conditions was enough to send shivers down one's spine. Moreover, in those tiny flats, rooms measuring just 5 or 6 square meters could rent for 8,000 Hong Kong dollars. 6 people crammed into a 20 square meter public housing unit was a common sight. Therefore, for Mi Jiayan's family of 6 to live in a 1,000-square-foot home truly deserves the title of luxury residence. Suanwan district, right? Property prices here are relatively low compared to the rest of Hong Kong, aren't they? Fang Jian asked. Mi Jiayan shot him a disapproving look. The new territories are a bit cheaper than Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, but they're still pretty pricey. Fang Jian chuckled. "Alright then, I'll give you a task. Head over to Hong Kong Island or Kowloon and pick out an apartment for me." "What? You're buying a place?" Mi Jiayan's eyes widened. "Yeah, somewhere in Wan Chai or Yao Tsim Mong," Fang Jian instructed. Size-wise, a bit bigger than a 1,000-square-foot luxury flat around 1,500 square feet. Also, it needs to be close to a subway station. Mi Jiayan stared at Fang Jian for a moment, her heart pounding wildly. But she quickly reined in her excitement and said, "Sure thing. I'll call a friend of mine, she's a real estate agent with plenty of listings." The call connected quickly. Mi Jiayan rattled off the details, then reported, "Brother Fang, Sister Shui says she has 3 properties matching your requirements. But because the locations are prime, the prices are on the higher side." "How much?" Wan Chai district is 28,000 Hong Kong dollars per square foot at the Shihui development in Wan Chai, Hong Kong Island. In Yao Tsim Mong district, there are 2 options, one at 22,000 Hong Kong dollars and another at 19,800 Hong Kong dollars per square foot. Fang Jian nodded slightly. "Which one do you prefer?" Mi Jiayan's heartbeat quickened, but she remained composed. "If it were me, I'd recommend the Shihui development in Wan Chai. I used to work there. It's located near the Wan Chai MTR station, just a 2-minute walk to exit A2. Not only is it convenient, but the surrounding environment is excellent and it has strong appreciation potential." "Alright, let's schedule a viewing for tomorrow." Mi Jiayan hesitated before adding, "Brother Fang, there are purchase restrictions for mainland residents buying property in Hong Kong." "Purchase restrictions?" Fang Jian smiled faintly. "I know." That day, Mi Jiayan was unusually proactive and enthusiastic. Her fiery passion nearly melted Fang Jian. The next day, Fang Jian opened his computer and listed 200 bitcoins for sale. They sold quickly. Though he sold too, the impact on the market was negligible. It seemed he could slightly accelerate his pace. This transaction netted him over $3.4 million. Over the past 4 days, his total profits exceeded $6.7 million, equivalent to over 52 million Hong Kong dollars. He then shut down his computer, had Mi Jiayan accompany him, and took a taxi to Wan Chai Tower. In Hong Kong, while real estate was expensive, cars were even pricier. It wasn't the purchase price that was prohibitive, but the exorbitant cost of maintaining them. Therefore, most people simply don't own cars. Sister Su, a middle-aged woman in her 40s dressed in a business suit, led them to Shihui. Truthfully, Fang Jian didn't care for the surroundings here. It was simply too noisy. But the moment they entered the room, Fang Jian saw Mi Jiayan's eyes practically glowing with excitement. Chapter 219, the 1,300-square-foot mansion. This was a 1,300-square-foot home, which converted to just over 120 square meters. Of course, this referred to the usable area. If converted to gross floor area, it would be around 150 square meters. Yet this home boasted 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and even a maid's room. Fang Jian glanced at the maid's room, barely enough space for a bed and a small, separate bathroom. It must be said, the space in this house was utilized to the absolute limit. Moreover, the previous owners had maintained it quite well. Fang Jian had intended to view the other 2 units, but upon observing Mi Jiayan's attitude, his interest vanished instantly. "Sister Su, how much is this property?" The owner is asking for 28,000 per square foot. At 1,300 square feet, the total comes to 36.4 million. Fang Jian cut her off. That's 36 million. Tell the owner if it's acceptable, let's sign the contract. Sister Su paused, taken aback. This buyer was indeed generous even though he just slashed the price by 400,000 yuan in one go. But for a property like this, a 400,000 discount was hardly significant. Moreover, someone who could produce 36 million Hong Kong dollars without hesitation and still look completely unfazed, she dared not offend such a client. Apologizing briefly, Sister Su stepped away to make a call. She returned looking thrilled. Mr. Fong, the landlord, agreed. He'll be here soon. She glanced at Mi Jiayan, her lips moving silently to convey, don't worry, sis won't shortchange your referral fee. Fang Jian nodded. Jiayan, go handle the paperwork and put your name on it. Sister Su's mouth instantly fell open, her eyes widening in shock. At first, she hadn't found it strange when Mi Jiayan brought someone to view the property. Mainlanders buying property here was nothing new. As long as they could pay, nothing was off limits. However, Sister Su had initially assumed Fang Jian was her client, and she was hoping to earn a commission. But she never expected. Her gaze swept over the two of them, and Sister Su immediately understood. She said enviously, Su Nu, you're so lucky to have found someone who truly cares for you. Mi Jiayan's eyes widened. Though she'd fantasized about Fang Jian buying her a house yesterday. But those were just fantasies. We're talking tens of millions here, more money than she could ever earn in a lifetime. Even if she never ate, drank, or spent a penny, she still couldn't earn it. So while she harbored hopes, she knew deep down it was nothing but a beautiful dream. But today, Fang Jian had come out swinging with a bombshell. She felt her legs go weak, nearly losing her balance. Fang Jian shook his head slightly. Jiayan, hurry up and finish the paperwork. You still need to teach me how to swim. Swimming? Su's sister stared in disbelief. What kind of code was this? Why couldn't she understand it? Mi Jiayan finally calmed down a bit. She pursed her lips and said, Sister Su, I'm his swimming instructor. Ah, swimming? So this swimming really was about swimming. Yes, we met while swimming, Mi Jiayan said with a hint of pride. That chance encounter was undoubtedly the best decision she'd ever made. Half an hour later, the landlord arrived. Since there was no mortgage involved, the paperwork was completed quickly. Of course, completing the property transfer would still take some time. But Fang Jian couldn't care less about that now. He stayed the night, handing Mi Jiayan some money to have the place cleaned up. Though no major renovations were needed, repainting the walls and purchasing furniture would still take time. That night, Mi Jiayan went out of her way to please him. The next morning, just before he left, Mi Jiayan whispered softly, Brother Fang, rest assured. If you don't contact me, I won't reach out to you. Fang Jian glanced at her, gave a slight nod, and said, I'm leaving. Watching Fang Jian walk away, tears slowly welled up in the corners of Mi Jiayan's eyes. These tears weren't entirely tears of joy, a significant portion of them were tears of sorrow. For it was only now, through his attitude, that she had confirmed her place in his life. But if given the chance to choose again, she would still choose without hesitation to strike up a conversation again. After Fang Jian departed, Mi Jiayan composed herself and returned to the company. It was a training company where she worked as a body management instructor. But to accompany Fang Jian, she had already taken 4 days off. Fortunately, having worked there for years and built a loyal client base, her boss wouldn't give her a hard time about it. Upon arriving at the office, she ran into some colleagues. They were chatting and laughing when Liao Naimei suddenly remarked, Hey, I heard that jealous woman upstairs got beaten up by her husband and is now filing for divorce. Really? What happened? The gossip started flowing. Liao Naimei chuckled, what else could it be? She's just too jealous. Women, if you can't keep a man tied down, don't go around being jealous for no reason. Otherwise, one day, you'll get dumped. Right, Jiayan? Everyone froze, exchanging puzzled glances. Mi Jiayan chuckled, you're absolutely right. Women shouldn't get jealous over nothing. Liao Naimei tilted her head back, a hint of smugness in her expression. In truth, however, her heart was filled with silent resentment. She had clearly added that wealthy mainland guy. But after waiting all day, she never got a reply. When she finally messaged him, she discovered she'd been blocked. This was absolutely unbearable. Of course, she'd only assumed Mi Jiayan was pulling strings behind the scenes. So when she finally spotted Mi Jiayan at work today, she couldn't resist taking a few jabs. To her surprise, the usually formidable Mi Jiayan conceded defeat so quickly. Mi Jiayan glanced at the crowd and smiled, saying, Everyone, I just bought a new place and am renovating it. Once it's done, I'll host a housewarming party, you all have to come. The group fell silent for a moment before questions started flying, the atmosphere suddenly buzzing with excitement. It's in Wan Chai, Hong Kong Island, the Shihui development. Not huge, just 1,300 square feet. Paid in full. Liao Naimei stared speechless at the triumphant Mi Jiayan, her mind in utter turmoil. That person. It had to be him. Good heavens, what exactly did I miss? Chapter 220, Old Classmates Reunion. After getting off the plane, Fong Jian headed to the parking lot. This time, he hadn't taken the subway or anything, he'd parked his car directly at the airport. For 6 days, the total cost was 480 yuan. For the average person, that parking fee was indeed steep. But for Fong Jian's current income, it was a mere drop in the bucket, hardly worth mentioning. After driving back home, Fong Jian tossed his things aside and opened his computer to check. Alright, the 100 bitcoins listed for sale today had already sold out. His HSBC account showed over $1 million more, ready to be transferred to domestic banks at any time. In fact, phone calls had gradually increased over the past few days, either pitches from major banks promoting financial services or calls trying to sell him real estate. While he'd received quite a few before, several every day, they had quieted down for a while. Now they were rampant again. Fong Jian wondered if it was time to get 2 phone numbers. After stepping out for a walk, Fong Jian arrived at Zhang Tao's boxing club. Seeing him arrive, everyone rushed over to greet him. Liang Chao even ran over to personally brew tea and serve water. Fong Jian glanced at the fitness equipment here, thought for a moment, and decided not to use it. He feared his strength might be too great, and damaging the equipment would be problematic. It wasn't that he couldn't afford to pay for it, he just didn't want people to look at him like he was some kind of freak. After briefly instructing a few people on their boxing and kicking techniques, Zhang Tao strolled in leisurely. His eyes lit up upon seeing Fong Jian. Well, you finally decided to come back, huh? Fong Jian nodded. What, missed me that much? Still want to get back in the ring for some practice? Zhang Tao rolled his eyes. Hell no, I'm not stupid. Get beaten up by you on the ring? Yeah, right. He walked over, slung an arm around Fong Jian's shoulder, and said, Hey, gotta tell you something. What is it? An old classmate of ours just got back from abroad. He wants to gather a small group for a reunion. Interested? Zhang Tao asked with a grin. Fong Jian furrowed his brow slightly. Gong Ningxin? Ha? How'd you know? Zhang Tao looked genuinely surprised. Who invited you? Fong Jian chuckled. Don't ask so many questions. But you shouldn't be going, right? Zhang Tao glared at him. Why the hell can't I go? I seem to recall back in high school, you weren't exactly focused on your studies. You were quite the expert at creating gossip. Didn't you and Gong Ningxin have a bit of a scandal going on for a while? Zhang Tao gave an awkward laugh. You said it yourself, it was just gossip. What do you mean, gossip? Don't you get it? Fong Jian curled his lip in disdain, unwilling to argue with such a person. Hey, be honest, Zhang Tao whispered. I heard Gong Ningxin came back this time looking for investment. You've got all that money. If you don't have good channels, you really should consider it. Fong Jian froze. What do you mean? After Gong Ningxin went abroad, she married a foreigner, but they divorced, Zhang Tao said slowly. Fong Jian frowned slightly. Hey, I asked about investment, and you're telling me about her love life? That's completely irrelevant. Zhang Tao shot him a glare. He'd been about to wax poetic, but now all desire for sentimentality vanished. Fine. Gong Ningxin has been shuttling between Paris and Shanghai these past few years. She used to be the domestic supplier manager for Sisley Cosmetics, but now she wants to strike out on her own. Zhang Tao added irritably, I hear she's taken on another Parisian cosmetics brand as an agent. She's short on cash and looking for investors. Fong Jian looked surprised. Do you think this is a good opportunity? I had someone look into it. The prospects are quite promising. If you have spare capital to invest, the chances of success are fairly high. The domestic cosmetics industry is already intensely competitive. But anyone with eyes can see the market will only keep growing. More and more women are willing to invest in themselves. Therefore, as long as you have a unique selling point, it's relatively easy to succeed in this industry. Of course, all this hinges on capital investment. Without sufficient funds, getting pushed out is a high probability outcome. Hey, if it's so promising, why aren't you investing? Zhang Tao shot him a glare. I'm married, how could I invest? Besides, she wouldn't settle for peanuts. Where would I even get that kind of spare cash? Zhang Tao's family ran a gold jewelry business, so money certainly wasn't an issue. But that was the family's money, not his alone. Fong Jian retorted irritably, You bastard. Trying to get investment for your old flame by dipping into your brother's money? Talk about prioritizing women over friends. Zhang Tao scoffed. Listen, I genuinely believe in this industry. He pulled out his phone. If you don't want in, I'll find someone else. Fong Jian chuckled. Alright, cut the act. When's the next get-together? We'll talk about it then. He knew full well Zhang Tao wasn't the type to abandon friends for romance. If he was this adamant, it meant he genuinely believed in that field. But how to put it? Probably his investment plans and suggestions hadn't gotten the green light from his family. Or perhaps he was too hesitant to even bring it up with them. If that was the case, Fong Jian found himself genuinely intrigued. After all, with so much money sitting idle at home and in the bank, Fong Jian hadn't figured out what to do with it anyway. As long as the investment didn't lose money, or only suffered a slight loss, Fong Jian could accept it. It's tonight. I've already booked the place. Let's head over together, you and me, Zhang Tao said cheerfully. Fang Jian froze, surprised. Hey, did you know I just got back today, so you specifically chose this time? Nonsense. Zhang Tao retorted. When I called you the day before yesterday, you said you wouldn't be back for 3 more days. If I hadn't gotten that call from Liang Chao today, I wouldn't have known either. The two bantered and laughed as they got into the car, grabbing a quick bite for lunch. In the afternoon, they found a reputable massage parlor before heading to Seafood House ahead of schedule. This hotel wasn't the most upscale, but it truly lived up to its name, Seafood House. Its authentic, fresh seafood made it a favorite among gourmands. Chapter 221, Getting straight to the point about investment. Shortly after entering the private room, a man walked in. Dressed in a suit and tie, he wore gold-rimmed glasses, exuding an air of refined elegance. Hey, Zhang Tao, you got here so early. And this is Fang Jian? Fang Jian chuckled. Hey, Su Yanghua. After all these years, you still recognize me at first glance? Impressive. Among their high school classmates, Su Yanhua was among the most successful. He now served as the teaching director at No. 4 High School. Though not the sole director, he was undeniably a capable individual. Su Yanhua laughed heartily. Fang Jian, you're not being fair to me. He turned to Zhang Tao. When you got married, I was in Beijing for training and couldn't make it. Hope you don't mind. Zhang Tao waved his hand dismissively. No big deal. Your gift arrived, and that's all that matters. Whether you could make it or not, I wouldn't have cared either way. All three of them laughed together. Yet as Su Yanghua laughed, his gaze kept drifting toward Fang Jian. He didn't remember much about Fang Jian anymore. Though he knew the two were close friends, wasn't it a bit inappropriate to invite Fang Jian to this particular occasion? After a moment's thought, Su Yanghua said, Zhang Tao, how many others are there? That show-off when De Yuan volunteered to pick up Gong Ningxin and Yu Yudi, Zhang Tao replied with a chuckle. Ha, that when De Yuan kid still can't get over Yu Yudi, huh? When De Yuan runs a logistics company with 5 branches in Yongchang. Among their classmates, he's considered well off. Of course, the real money came from his dad. His family owned a construction crew that had secured numerous projects. In a way, when De Yuan was even wealthier than Zhang Tao. But this guy hadn't turned into a playboy. Instead, he'd been pursuing Yu Yudi since high school. Rumor has it he still hasn't won her heart. Speak of the devil. Soon, the door to the private room swung open, and a man and 2 women entered. It was precisely the trio they'd been discussing. Upon entering, they spotted Zhang Tao and Su Yanghua, all wearing broad smiles. But when they suddenly spotted Fang Jian, they all froze slightly. Yu Yudi's eyes lit up as she exclaimed, Hey! Fang Jian, you're here too? Fang Jian chuckled, What's the matter? Aren't I your classmate? Can't I come? Yu Yudi snorted, I invited you over, but you refused to come. Why show up suddenly today? Missing Ning Xin? Gong Ningxin froze, nudging her best friend and laughing, Oh, you and your big mouth, always spouting nonsense. When De Yuan exchanged greetings with Fang Jian before turning to ask, Yudi, when did you invite Fang Jian? His question seemed casual, but everyone present found it amusing. Yu Yudi's delicate brows furrowed slightly, but she replied, Fang Jian came to our bank last week to handle some paperwork. We happened to run into each other, so I invited him to dinner and mentioned it. He said he had to go on a business trip and didn't have time. Fang Jian quickly interjected, Hey, Yu Yudi, I wasn't lying to you. I've been on a business trip the whole time and just got back this morning. Ask Zhang Tao if you don't believe me. Zhang Tao nodded in agreement. 2 days ago, this guy was still in Hong Kong City. I only found out he was back today, so I dragged him along. When De Yuan breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled, Fang Jian, having a blast in Hong Kong? Next time, bring your brothers along. Fang Jian chuckled, Hong Kong isn't much to see these days. Just expensive real estate and pricey cabs not as good as Shanghai. Everyone burst into laughter, though it was the honest truth. As they sat down, Fang Jian tugged at Su Yanghua's sleeve, seemingly wanting to talk. But in reality, he was making room. Thus, the 2 groups of men and women ended up sitting together. In his heart, though, Fang Jian silently apologized to Chao Qingxin. The waitstaff served the dishes quickly. As everyone ate and drank, they reminisced about their school days, and the atmosphere gradually grew lively. After 3 rounds of drinks, Gong Ningxin put down his chopsticks and said, Classmates, I invited you all here without beating around the bush. I have a favor to ask. Zhang Tao and the others had already heard the rumors. They too set down their chopsticks and turned their attention to Gong Ningxin. Though Gong Ningxin had passed the peak of her youth, the years had settled upon her, lending her a different kind of charisma, that of a formidable woman. She smiled at everyone and stated plainly, I resigned from Sisley headquarters because I believe in the cosmetics industry and in another brand from Paris. Her voice was clear and resonant. This brand currently has limited influence domestically, but it enjoys considerable global renown and boasts exceptionally high sales. In recent years, many Chinese travelers have specifically sought out its products abroad, indicating it has already gained significant traction among high-end consumers in China. Fang Jian listened to her articulate discourse, feeling a genuine sense of nostalgia. He recalled that back in high school, Gong Ningxin had always been an exceptional speaker. Not only was she the English class representative, but she also represented the school in city-level English speech competitions. He recalled she ultimately placed second, bringing honor to the school. He never imagined that after all these years, she would still be as formidable as ever. Right now, I'm working hard to secure the domestic agency rights for this brand, which requires a substantial amount of capital. That's why I've come back this time to ask for your financial support. The others exchanged glances but remained silent. While they were classmates, everyone knew this wasn't a small sum. A few hundred or even 1,000 yuan wouldn't faze anyone here. But if a 10,000 was added to the end, then anyone would need to think it over carefully. Ning Xin, are you looking to raise investment for equity, or just borrowing money? Zhang Tao asked with a smile. Fang Jian shot him a glance, inwardly cursing. This guy was playing the straight man. Gong Ningxin replied with a smile, either is fine, but I'm optimistic about this brand's future, so I lean toward borrowing. However, if it's a private loan, I'm afraid I won't be able to afford the interest. Indeed, private loan interest rates were exorbitant. It might work for short-term cash flow, but relying on private loans to run a business would guarantee you'd lose everything. Chapter 222, The Parisian Brand. When De Yuan laughed heartily, Gong Ningxin, how much have you personally prepared? Gong Ningxin glanced around at the others and said, I've told everyone I've prepared 50 million, and I plan to raise another 50 million. Zhang Tao and the others watched and listened with amused smiles, none offering comment. Gong Ningxin continued, but among us, I won't exaggerate. I mortgaged my Shanghai apartment and secured 25 million. However, I still need another 20 to 30 million in funding. The others exchanged glances, finally beginning to believe him. Such a massive sum couldn't possibly be believed just because she was singing a solo act. They would need to verify the details. Gong Ningxin smiled. Of course, returning today, beyond this matter, my primary purpose was to see all of you old classmates. Knowing you're all doing well brings me great comfort. Fang Jian observed impassively, his gaze drifting toward Su Yanghua. Today's gathering was primarily for fundraising. Inviting Zhang Tao and Wen Deyuan was only natural, and even bringing Yu Yudi along was understandable. After all, she now worked in the credit department at ICBC. If they needed a loan, her connections would certainly be useful. But why invite Su Yanghua? Fang Jian didn't believe a high school teaching director could be of any help in such matters. There were 42 students in their high school class. If we're talking about those who were obviously well off, it would definitely be Zhang Tao and Wen Deyuan. As for the others, they were scattered across various organizations. Two of them had done quite well for themselves, holding positions within the system that were no less prestigious than Su Yanghua's. Yet today, only Su Yanghua had been invited. This old classmate's family is truly a hidden gem. Ahem. Zhang Tao suddenly cleared his throat loudly, then kicked Fang Jian with his foot. Fang Jian sighed inwardly, his frustration mounting. He grew increasingly certain that if anyone claimed this guy in Gong Ningxin were completely innocent, he'd twist his own head off and kick it like a ball. He shot him a worried glance. You just got married, kid. Don't go messing up right away. Gong Ningxin, what brand are you trying to get? Fang Jian asked slowly. Gong Ningxin looked at Fang Jian, feeling rather puzzled. Before today, she already knew who she would be meeting. To be honest, her schedule back home was tight, so she could only meet with a few people who could be useful to her. Zhang Tao, Su Yanghua, and Wen Deyuan were the ones she'd carefully selected through various channels. As for Yu Yudi, she still owned an apartment in Yongchang and was trying to arrange a mortgage loan. But what she never expected was encountering Fang Jian here. Though his appearance had changed considerably at first glance, he resembled a burly, sun-kissed man, starkly different from her memories. But in her memory, wasn't Fang Jian from an ordinary family? How had he managed to get involved in this? Nevertheless, when Fang Jian asked, she readily named a brand. Of course, while her words were directed at Fang Jian, they were actually meant for Zhang Tao and the others. Fang Jian nodded slightly upon hearing this, pulled out his phone, found Robert's number, and dialed it. Although Robert wasn't in the cosmetics industry, he was well connected in Europe. That evening gathering in Paris had significantly expanded his network. For Fang Jian's sake, he'd be more than happy to make inquiries. Hey, Robert, how's it going? Dear Fang, how's your break going? Ready to come back and perform? Robert complained, my inbox is overflowing with your invitations. Fang Jian chuckled and said, Robert, I'd like to ask about a French cosmetics brand. Could you find out for me how they're perceived globally? Are they planning to enter the domestic market? Are they currently recruiting distributors? Sure thing, I'll look into it right away. Robert didn't quite understand why Fang Jian was inquiring about this, but he readily agreed nonetheless. Everyone watched as Fang Jian took out his phone and chattered away with someone on the other end. They all exchanged bewildered glances, utterly unable to comprehend what Fang Jian was saying. Moments later, Fang Jian put down his phone. Seeing the puzzled looks on everyone's faces, he picked up his wine glass and said with a smile, come on, let's drink. Only then did everyone raise their glasses. Yu Yudi couldn't hold back any longer. Fang Jian, what language were you speaking just now? Italian, Fang Jian replied with a grin. When Zhang Tao went on his honeymoon, I tagged along with a few friends and picked up a bit. By mentioning Zhang Tao's wedding specifically in this setting, he was also sending a subtle reminder to Gong Ningxin. Gong Ningxin smiled, his expression unchanged, while Zhang Tao looked slightly annoyed. Wow, you actually learned Italian? When did you get so smart? Yu Yudi exclaimed in surprise. Fang Jian's face darkened slightly. If she weren't a classmate, would you believe I'd just leave? When De Yuan quickly interjected, hey, Fang Jian, don't mind her. She's always been like this. Let me buy you a drink. Watching him down his drink in one gulp, Fang Jian followed suit and said, Bai Mowen, we're all classmates. I'm not that petty. When De Yuan paused, chuckled, and tapped Fang Jian on the shoulder before letting it go. Yu Yudi cursed at Fang Jian, who turned around and called her by a childhood nickname. The implication was clear, we're even now, so no hard feelings. Willingly shielding Yu Yudi from trouble was something when De Yuan embraced wholeheartedly. At the table, everyone began reminiscing about old times, and no one mentioned the fundraising matter again. They all understood that if anyone still intended to raise funds, they would have contacted Gong Ningxin privately. After dinner, when De Yuan suggested going for karaoke, and everyone naturally cheered in agreement. Zhang Tao suddenly grabbed Fang Jian's arm and whispered, You're not touching the mic tonight. Why? If you touch the mic, we won't be able to sing a damn thing. Fang Jian sighed inwardly. He could tell this guy just didn't want him to show off in front of Gong Ningxin. At the KTV, Fang Jian's phone rang. Surprised, he excused himself and stepped into a corner to take the call. Hey, Fang, I sent the info you wanted to my email. That fast? The brand owner you asked about? We met him at that gala last time. He's actually a fan of yours. When you performed at the Paris Opera House, his whole family came to support you. Chapter 223, Is this guy really Fang Jian? Only then did Fang Jian realize this connection existed. Robert continued, all the details are in your inbox. Take a look. Oh, and if you're interested in collaborating with him, I'm sure he'll give you the best possible deal. Fang Jian thanked him, hung up, and began reading the introduction on his phone right there. Modern phones with internet access could connect to email. The profile was extremely detailed. This brand was a century-old name with immense prestige in the luxury goods industry, rivaling Sisley. However, having neglected the domestic market in recent years, its current recognition in China lagged behind those brands. However, they had now adjusted their strategy and were beginning to target the domestic market. They were currently recruiting agents nationwide. What surprised Fang Jian was that he spotted the list of applicants for the agency position within this very document. After flipping through several pages, Fang Jian couldn't find Gong Ningxin's name. But then again, it made sense she couldn't possibly compete as an individual. She must have participated in the distributor recruitment event under the banner of a company. Generally speaking, while these materials weren't top secret, they certainly weren't something you could just casually pull out. Recalling Robert's words, Fang Jian suddenly understood. It seemed his fan, having overheard him inquiring about this matter, had actually wanted him to apply for the agency recruitment as well. Business is business. Fang Jian was certain this person wasn't acting out of fan-crazed enthusiasm. He was likely trying to leverage his so-called Oriental Pavarotti status as a marketing gimmick. For business people, mutual benefit is what truly matters. Inside the KTV, when De Yuan grabbed the microphone and started shouting. His voice wasn't particularly strong, but he was surprisingly on key. Fang Jian sat down, and Zhang Tao immediately leaned in, whispering, Hey, what's your decision? Others didn't know what he'd been up to during lunch, but since Zhang Tao had accompanied him to Europe, he could guess. Fang Jian murmured, I've looked into it. This project is worth a shot. Zhang Tao's eyes lit up. I told you I wouldn't lead you on, bro. Fang Jian glanced at Gong Ningxin and Yu Yudi singing and murmured, but I have one condition. If she doesn't manage it well in the future, I'll pull my investment. You can't interfere. Zhang Tao's eyes widened. That goes without saying. No one's money grows on trees. If she messes it up, do you expect her to squander it all? Fine, then you talk to her. I'll call her over. You talk to her yourself. Fang Jian paused, about to speak, when Zhang Tao called out, Gong Ningxin, Fang Jian wants to talk to you. Gong Ningxin finished her song, clinked glasses with Yu Yudi, and approached with a smile. Fang Jian, what is it? Seeing Zhang Tao looking even more impatient than himself, Fang Jian couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He turned, maintaining his smile, and said, Gong Ningxin, I'm somewhat interested in your proposal. Under what name are you bidding? Gong Ningxin paused. Fang Jian was actually interested in that plan? Her gaze involuntarily flicked toward Zhang Tao's face before quickly shifting back. I established a new company called Xinmei. Xinmei? Fang Jian recalled what he'd seen earlier. It seemed such a company did indeed exist. Alright, then do you have a business plan? Fang Jian asked in a deep voice. How much capital do you intend to raise? How will the shares be distributed? And most importantly, how do you plan to gain their approval and secure the agency rights? Gong Ningxin's eyes shifted as she replied firmly, I plan to raise 30 million yuan. This sum could be considered a loan or an equity investment, but if it's invested, it would only account for 30% of the shares. 30 million for 30%? That seems low. 30 million is substantial, but that's only the capital contribution. Gong Ningxin raised his eyebrows, a hint of pride in his voice. But I haven't factored in my human capital contribution yet. Human capital? Yes. I've worked in cosmetics for 10 years and know every rule of the industry inside out. I have 3 counters in stores across Shanghai, a network of industry contacts, and a team of employees under me. Without this 30 million, I might not succeed. But without me, even 100 million won't get it off the ground. Wow, that's quite the boast, Fang Jian chuckled. So, are you confident you can secure this agency? Gong Ningxin declared with pride, 90%. Fang Jian couldn't agree with that statement. That's how business people operate. Even with just a 1% chance, they'll present it as 100% certainty when raising capital. After a moment's thought, Fang Jian said, alright. I'll send some people tomorrow to verify the situation. If it's feasible, 30 million yuan for a 30% stake. After uttering those words, Fang Jian distinctly sensed Zhang Tao beside him visibly relax. He inwardly despised the guy for prioritizing women over friendship. Still, 30 million? At his current rate of earning, it wouldn't even take 3 days. Fang Jian didn't really care either way. Of course, verifying the offer with someone else was essential. Otherwise, he'd be a total sucker. After the verbal agreement, Fang Jian rose and headed to the restroom. Su Yanhuan and Wen Deyuan exchanged bewildered glances, neither expecting Fang Jian to be the first to make a move this time. Now, only the 5 of them remained in the private room. Gong Ningxin remained silent for a moment before suddenly saying, Zhang Tao, thank you. Me? Zhang Tao froze, feeling a pang of guilt. Su Yanhuan and Wen Deyuan exchanged glances, finally realizing that this kid had been pulling strings behind the scenes. Just then, Yu Yuti burst into loud laughter. Oh my, that's hilarious. Ningxin, did you really think the money Fang Jian pulled out was actually this kid Zhang Tao's? Gong Ningxin's mouth fell open slightly, confusion evident. Su Yanghua and Wen Deyuan were equally perplexed. Wasn't that the case? Zhang Tao quickly interjected, hey, you've got the wrong idea. That was entirely Fang Jian's own decision. I just explained the situation. Yu Yuti finally stifled her laughter and said, Ning Xin, let me tell you, last week I ran into Fang Jian at the bank and treated him to a meal. I casually complained about not meeting my deposit targets, and guess what happened? What happened? That kid Fang Jian didn't say a word, he just deposited this much. She held up a slender, pale finger. $1 million? 10 million, and it's a 3-year fixed deposit. Everyone was stunned. Is this really the Fang Jian they knew? Chapter 224, $300 million in a Swiss bank account, take it or leave it. That night, Fang Jian had barely drifted off to sleep when he sensed his father's voice. Opening his eyes, he saw his father slowly approaching him. But unlike before, his expression today was strangely off. Fang Jian shot upright. Dad, don't scare me like that. Are you okay? His father waved his hand impatiently. What could possibly be wrong with me? Stop talking nonsense. Fang Jian studied his father closely, finally concluding he might just be imagining things. His father sighed and said, Son, you sent me 500 billion. I received it. Okay. I gave the Bitcoin to that person too. His father hesitated before adding, it was so expensive. Did you make a profit? Fang Jian's expression turned slightly strange. Make money? You're kidding me, make money? This is a fortune, for crying out loud. 15 million yuan in Joss paper could buy 10,800 Bitcoins. Besides his dad, Fang Jian couldn't imagine where else he could find such a golden opportunity. Seeing the look on Fang Jian's face, his father instantly understood. This deal would certainly turn a profit for his son, but not a huge one. He cleared his throat softly and said, Son, I've found another business opportunity for you. What kind of business? Fang Jian asked casually. His reaction to these business opportunities had grown somewhat sluggish. In other words, he had enough money on hand, so he felt little motivation to make more. There's some Arab prince with $300 million in cash deposited at a Swiss bank. He wants to cash it out. How much can you handle? An Arab prince? Yeah. He says he's the legitimate heir who was overthrown. When he went into exile, he had 300 million in funds earmarked for restoring his kingdom. But then he died in a car accident, so the money became useless. Rather than letting the bank profit from it, he'd rather convert it into afterlife currency so he can keep enjoying himself over there. Fang Jian's expression shifted slightly. He hurriedly said, Dad, you're losing your mind. Bah, his father snapped angrily. You're the one who's young and foolish. Fang Jian waved his hand dismissively. Dad, you misunderstand. I mean, is this something ordinary folks like us should even touch? If I were to take this money, wouldn't it bring endless trouble? His father laughed heartily. I thought there was some deeper issue. So that's what it was. He waved his hand dismissively. I've already checked it out for you. This guy didn't use his real name to deposit the money. He used 10 fake passports to spread it across 30 different Swiss banks. Fang Jian froze, astonished. This guy's pretty smart, huh? If all that money were in one bank, no matter how bold Fang Jian was, he wouldn't have considered it. $300 million in one account? That's a massive trap. Touch it and you're screwed. But if it was spread across 30 accounts under 10 different names, then each account averaged just $10 million. That was still a huge sum. It would attract far less attention compared to a single account holding $300 million. He stashed the fake passport, account credentials, the phone number he used back then, and the electronic transfer key in a Swiss bank safe deposit box. No one knows about it. Fang Jian didn't press his father on whether he was certain about such details. He already understood that such a massive oversight was impossible under the rules of the underworld. So perhaps this man's demise truly came down to luck. Alright, old man, have him come over. Dad turned, beckoned, and a man with distinctly Arabian attire emerged from outside the circle. He approached, bowed to Fang Jian, and then transmitted a fragment of memory. After receiving the memory, Fang Jian breathed a sigh of relief. He discovered that the equipment this man had left behind was remarkably comprehensive. Once he got his hands on the items, there was no need to go to a bank. He could transfer money anywhere in the world with internet access, using just a computer and an electronic key. Of course, this required an overseas bank account. Fortunately, during his trip to Hong Kong to exchange Bitcoin, Fang Jian had obtained a HSBC card. But just one card. Fang Jian still felt uneasy. He decided that after leaving, he would apply for cards from other banks as well. Though doing so felt a bit like sticking one's fingers in one's ears while pretending not to hear the bell ring. It was still far better than keeping all his money on a single card. After transferring the memory to Fang Jian, the man hesitated before saying, "Mr. Fang, if possible, please retrieve the items within a month and transfer the funds into your own account." Fang Jian froze and asked, "Why?" "As you know, every bank has its regulations. I'm concerned that if too much time passes, the electronic key might expire. Dealing with that afterward would be quite troublesome." "Only 1 month? Because I've been here nearly a year now. I estimate the earliest card's key will expire in about a month." The Arab man added with a hint of pleading, "Each card holds 10 million, so..." Fang Jian waved his hand. "Alright, I understand. Rest assured, I'll handle this as quickly as possible." The Arab thanked him gratefully before turning to leave. Fang Jian marveled inwardly at the man's remarkable politeness. Not only was he bringing money, but he was also so considerate. Regardless of how much he ultimately received, those 300 million JOS paper dollars would be handed over to him in full, not a single one missing. His father came over, chatted with Fang Jian for a few moments, and once again urged him to get married quickly so he could hold a grandchild. Then, Fang Jian experienced that sensation of rapid descent once more. After waking up, Fang Jian exercised for a while before immediately calling Fang Xiaohua. "Xiaohua, I need to hire some lawyers and accountants to investigate a company's financial status and the growth prospects of an industry. Do you have any recommendations?" Fang Xiaohua chuckled, "Well, your brother here happens to be in that exact line of work. That's perfect. I'll have you come to Shanghai. When can you leave?" "Bro, this requires scheduling. I'll pay extra double the commission." "Ah, little brother, our law firm's motto is everything for the client. Just say the word, we can leave anytime." Fang Jian. Chapter 225. This is our national treasure. Early that morning, Fang Jian called Gong Ningxin directly and got straight to the point, requesting to visit the company headquarters for verification. Upon hearing Fang Jian's request, Gong Ningxin was quite excited. Although Fang Jian had agreed yesterday, she still felt a bit uneasy when it came to the actual investment. After all, this involved 30 million yuan. Moreover, her timeline was rather tight. Once the agency rights were secured, the company would need to immediately shift into high gear for rapid development. Funding would need to be in place by then. Therefore, the tighter the timeline Fang Jian demanded, the happier she felt. That afternoon, Fang Jian introduced Fang Xiaohua to Gong Ningxin. Because Fang Jian promised double the compensation, Fang Xiaohua immediately assembled a team. The legal profession fully demonstrated one thing. With money, nothing is impossible. Whether overseas or domestic, the essence remains fundamentally the same. So, after meeting, they drove straight out of Ningbo City and headed for Shanghai. Fang Jian was somewhat taken aback. For money, they really go all out. Zhan Tao and Yu Yudi both called to complain that Fang Jian had acted too hastily, causing Gong Ningxin to leave too quickly. Facing Yu Yudi, Fang Jian brushed it off with a casual smile and a couple of dismissive remarks. But with Zhan Tao, he snapped back. "You're the one who asked me for money. Now that it's time to invest, you blame me for moving too fast? We can't be friends anymore." Under Fang Jian's threat to pull out his investment, Zhan Tao quickly backed down. Hanging up the phone, Fang Jian felt relieved that his actions had been swift enough. Otherwise, with these two in the same city, trouble was bound to happen sooner or later. That afternoon, the phone rang again. This time it was Tan Moyang. She informed Fang Jian that the appraisers from the German and British museums had arrived at the university and hoped he could bring the copperplate engraving for them to examine. Fang Jian readily agreed. Although he no longer had much desire to sell the painting, it was necessary to show it off to those around him. That way, everyone would know he was a wealthy collector. Then, having a bit more money in his account wouldn't seem like such a big deal. For an ordinary person. If a person were just an ordinary individual, a sudden deposit of 10 million into their bank account would attract inquiries and scrutiny from the financial authorities. But if one is already a collector holding artworks worth hundreds of millions, then even if another 100 million appears, people would only wonder, did this guy sell some paintings? Did he evade taxes? They would never question where the money came from. Driving to the bank, Fang Jian retrieved the copperplate engraving and headed straight for the school. At that moment, the art school was on high alert. Not only were several teachers present, but 2 officials had also arrived. No need to ask, they were undoubtedly summoned by Su Yinghan. The painting's value was simply too immense. If he hadn't known about it, it wouldn't have mattered. But now, he dared not take any chances. Besides that, Fang Jian also spotted some foreigners. Their eyes practically lit up when they glanced at the backpack strapped to Fang Jian's back. Arriving at the same lecture hall as last time, Fang Jian paused in surprise. For here, he spotted someone he detested intensely. Wang Linxin, the former vice principal Wang. Did he actually have the nerve to show his face here? Fang Jian had to revise his opinion of him upward. If it were him, Fang Jian would never have the nerve to show his face again. Beside Wang Linxin stood 2 others, the 3 of them whispering quietly. Fang Jian naturally ignored this jerk. He placed the copperplate engraving on the easel covered in silk cloth from last time, then stepped back a couple of paces. The moment he stepped back, the foreigners swarmed around it. They examined it closely, even pulling out magnifying glasses. After obtaining Fang Jian's permission, they took out cameras to photograph the work. 2 of them even produced photographs for precise comparison. Sure enough, the photograph of Melancholia, which had been impossible to find domestically, was indeed preserved abroad. Half an hour later, after exchanging opinions, the experts flipped the copperplate engraving over for further examination. Finally, a bearded old man stated, "Sir, based on our assessment, this painting is highly likely to be the lost masterpiece Melancholia from World War II. I would like to request a carbon-14 dating test." Fang Jian smiled. "Certainly. We should have facilities in Yongcheng capable of performing that." "Of course there is." A man beside him suddenly stepped forward and said, "We have a specialized testing center in Yongcheng that can perform carbon-14 dating. However, the center doesn't accept individual clients, so..." Fang Jian cut him off. "If they won't take me, I can go to another city." Su Yinghan quickly interjected, "No need. I can arrange it under the university's name." Fang Jian nodded slightly before saying, "Sir, I have no objection to the carbon-14 testing. However, I take issue with what you just said." The bearded old man paused, puzzled. "What objections? You just said this is a lost masterpiece from your World War II era?" Fang Jian smiled. "Wrong. This isn't yours. I found it." The bearded old man's face flushed red with both agitation and anger. He whispered, "Sir, this is a national treasure of Germany." Fang Jian chuckled, "Is that so? Then you're implying this painting belongs to you?" "It would be best if so," the bearded old man declared solemnly. Fang Jian blinked twice and said, "Very well. I recall your museum holds a painting of mine that went missing, the bamboo and ink. I wonder when you might be able to return it." The bearded old man was speechless, his face flushing crimson. The ink bamboo painting was a masterpiece by Zhang Banxiao, said to have been lost abroad during the Eight-Nation Alliance invasion. For the nation, it was undoubtedly a national treasure. Su Yinghan quickly intervened, all right, everyone, no arguing. Let's proceed with the inspection first." The bearded old man shot Fang Jian a fierce glare and muttered under his breath, "Damned capitalist." Then, the group boarded the vehicle and headed toward the testing center. Chapter 226, National Treasures Must Be Surrendered. With so many bigwigs present, the testing center quickly agreed. As the testing personnel scraped a thin sample from the copperplate engraving, the foreigners' faces twisted in extreme discomfort, as if they were scraping their own flesh. Conventional carbon-14 dating typically takes 12 to 20 hours. However, the testing center had acquired a new instrument last year capable of performing accelerator mass spectrometry (AMS) carbon-14 dating. Not only did it require a smaller sample size, just 1 to 5 milligrams. Moreover, the testing time is extremely short, requiring only 10 to 20 minutes to achieve 1% accuracy. Naturally, the more meticulous the examination, the higher the precision rate. But since this painting isn't exactly a fossil-level artifact, this level of precision is sufficient. Half an hour later, when the results came in, everyone confirmed that this painting was indeed the one lost during World War II. A foreigner approached, pulled out a business card, and said, "Mr. Fang, I'm the head of Christie's Greater China region. My name is Lippy." "Mr. Lippy, hello." Lippy smiled and said, "I'm very interested in this painting. I wonder if Mr. Fang has any plans to auction it off." Fang Jian chuckled, not at the moment, thank you. Lippy persisted, Mr. Fang, if you were to consider auctioning it, we could offer a guaranteed reserve price of 80 million. Fang Jian glanced at him and chuckled, Mr. Lippy, my starting price is 100 million. Lippy gritted his teeth, seemingly wrestling with a fierce internal battle. Then he said, alright, we'll go with a reserve price of 100 million. Fang Jian rolled his eyes. Mr. Lippy, I think you didn't hear me clearly earlier. I have no plans to auction it off for now. Lippy shrugged his shoulders. Though reluctant, he sighed and stepped back. Fang Jian carefully repacked the painting. Teacher Tan, once the appraisal is complete, may I take the painting back? Tan Moyang smiled. Of course. However, just then, a middle-aged man beside Wang Linchen suddenly spoke up, young man, hold on a moment. Fang Jian halted in his tracks. He glanced over with a hint of impatience. He had no fondness whatsoever for the people surrounding Wang Linchen. But with several foreigners present, Fang Jian didn't want to make a spectacle of domestic disputes in front of outsiders. Therefore, he turned back. Before doing so, though, he glanced at Su Yinghan and gave her a subtle nod. Su Yinghan, being exceptionally intelligent as the university president, immediately understood his meaning. He laughed heartily and said, Doctors, you've been busy all morning. You must be hungry. Come, come. I've made reservations at a restaurant. Let me treat you to the delicious flavors of Chinese cuisine. With a wave of his hand, the professor swarmed forward without hesitation, dragging the bearded man and his companions away. Though the others protested that they wanted to continue the appraisal, they couldn't resist the persistent persuasion of the group and eventually got into the car and left. Once the outsiders were gone, Fang Jian turned and said, Hello, you are. I'm a staff member from the City Museum, the middle-aged man replied with a smile. We heard you had a national treasure in your possession, young comrade, so we came to see for ourselves. It truly is a painting worthy of national treasure status. Fang Jian nodded slightly and said, Have you seen it? Yes, we have. It was quite an eye-opener. Good. Fang Jian smiled. Glad you did. Goodbye. With that, he turned to leave. The man immediately grew anxious and hurriedly called out, Hey, young comrade, wait a moment. What else is there? Young man, here's the thing, I hope you'll show your spirit and donate this national treasure to the country. Fang Jian paused, turning back. Donate it to the nation? Yes, donate it to the nation. The state will offer you tremendous rewards. The man's expression was solemn. Fang Jian asked curiously, what kind of reward? The man perked up. It's primarily a commendation. We'll present you with a certificate of honor and give it extensive publicity. It's sure to become a major social talking point. Hold on, hold on. Fang Jian waved his hand. So you mean only non-monetary rewards? Just a certificate? The man smiled. Of course, we'll also consider material rewards. To honor your actions, we'll apply for the highest reward fund available, 200,000 yuan. Fang Jian looked puzzled. Sir, did you hear what that guy from Carlsberg Auction House said? He promised 100 million in US dollars, no less. The man's smile stiffened slightly. Ahem, but they can't offer you spiritual rewards. Fang Jian chuckled, thanks, but I don't need it. The man's expression darkened. Wang Linchen stepped forward. Fang Jian, don't be ungrateful. You know, according to national regulations, any national treasures found must be surrendered to the state. If you dare to destroy it privately, that's destruction of cultural relics. Oh my. Fang Jian chuckled cheerfully. Hey, former Vice Principal Wang. He deliberately emphasized and slowed his delivery of the words former and vice. This infuriated Wang Linchen to no end. I've read the relevant regulations too. National law states that national treasures unearthed from the land belong to the state, correct? Exactly, Wang Linchen declared with righteous indignation. Don't try to fool me. Everyone knows you dug up this painting. Fang Jian nodded repeatedly. Yes, I admit it. I dug this up from the ground. See? He admits it. Wang Linchen shouted aggressively. Hand it over now, or you'll end up in jail or get shot. The man glanced at him, his expression oddly unsettled. Fang Jian burst out laughing. Principal Wang, it seems you only heard half the story. Do you know where I dug it up from? Wang Linchen roared, I don't care where you dug it up. You're undermining the nation's foundations. Fang Jian gave a cold chuckle. Let me tell you, I dug it up while traveling in Poland. I'll abide by our country's laws, but those laws don't extend to Polish soil. Chapter 227, How do you prove you're your old man's biological son? Poland? Wang Linchen's eyes widened. He'd only heard that the treasure in Fang Jian's hands had been unearthed in Poland. He never imagined the excavation site was outside China. The country had relevant laws and regulations. Cultural relics belonged to the state, and turning them over to the authorities was every citizen's duty. But that definition applies to finds within China. Damn it, if someone were required to surrender treasures found abroad to the state too, it would likely spark nationwide chaos. You're lying. Wang Linchen, consumed by rage and fury, stammered incoherently, how can you prove this was excavated in Poland? Fang Jian sneered coldly. How could he prove it? He blinked twice, then suddenly asked, former Vice Principal Wang, you're of such advanced age. When I visited your home last time, I didn't see your father. How is his health? Wang Linqing froze, then blurted out, my father passed away over 10 years ago. Wait, when did you visit my home? Fang Jian laughed heartily. Exactly. Wang Linqing and the other man exchanged bewildered glances, neither quite grasping the meaning. What was right? Fang Jian's expression turned stern as he abruptly demanded, former Vice Principal Wang, let me ask you this, what proof do you have that you're your father's biological son? Maybe you were found? Or adopted? Or perhaps? In short, what evidence do you have that you're his real son? Wang Linqing gaped in shock, a surge of blood rushing to his head. He shouted, this is outrageous. I'll fight you. He lunged forward, swinging his arm in a wide arc, aiming a punch at Fang Jian. Hey, don't get angry. The man beside him rolled his eyes and stepped forward too, seemingly to break up the fight, but only with words, not actions. Fang Jian took half a step back, leaning his body slightly backward, perfectly avoiding the blow. Then, he reached out and pressed lightly on Wang Linqing's shoulder. A powerful force surged through his touch. Wang Linqing was caught off guard, unable to react in time. His body spun halfway, and the slap flew backward. Smack! The man behind him took a heavy blow to the face, his glasses flying off from the force of the slap. Ow! That hurts like hell. The man clutched his mouth, collapsing to the ground and gasping in pain. Wang Linqing, forgetting about Fang Jian, immediately crouched down to comfort him. Fang Jian sneered coldly, choosing not to engage with them. Instead, he pulled out his phone and immediately called the police. Of course, after dialing 911, he simultaneously called Su Yinghan and briefly explained the situation. Wang Linqing helped the man up, ready to explode, but hearing that Fang Jian had actually called the police himself left him utterly confused. Strange. Shouldn't we be the ones calling the police? When did it become this kid's turn? Soon, the police arrived. Not only did the officers arrive, but Su Yinghan and Tan Moyang showed up too. As for the foreigners, they were naturally accompanied by other school administrators. Upon seeing the officers, Wang Linqing immediately shouted, Officer, this guy started the fight. Arrest them now. Fang Jian sneered coldly, Officer, this guy is making false accusations. Besides, it was a mutual fight between those two, I had nothing to do with it. The officers inspected the situation and remarked, from what I see, it's not a serious matter. Why not settle this privately? Settle it privately? Fine. But only if he hands over the painting, Wang Linqing demanded. Fang Jian smiled. Officer, this is where the altercation happened. Look. He pointed with his finger. Everyone looked up to see a surveillance camera in the corner, its light flashing conspicuously. Wang Linqing's expression changed instantly. The officer understood immediately and nodded to Fang Jian. If anyone else had demanded the footage, the people here might not have handed it over. But with the officer present, they wouldn't dare conceal anything. Soon, everything was laid bare before the footage. The recording device not only captured video but also audio. Even the voices during their altercation were crystal clear. After reviewing it, the constable remarked irritably, Old man, you were the one who initiated the physical contact. He merely pushed you back while retreating. Yet you were the one who struck him. I suggest you two settle this amicably. Just as Wang Linqing was about to speak, the man behind him shook his head, pulled him back, and said, Forget it. He gave him a meaningful look. Though puzzled, Wang Linqing held his tongue. The man stepped forward, clutching his face. Despite the stinging pain, he forced a smile and said, Mr. Feng, my name is Luo Jiqiang. If you change your mind, you can come find me anytime. Fang Jian smiled. Alright, if I change my mind, I'll definitely come find you. Wait for me to change my mind? Fang Jian no longer wished to engage with him. Officer, thank you for your help. May we go now? Sure. If you've decided to settle this privately, I'll withdraw the report. The officer glanced at Fang Jian. Fang Jian smiled and nodded. Thank you. You've been very helpful. The officer shook his head, gave a final reminder to keep things civil and avoid impulsive violence, then departed. Once the officer was gone, Fang Jian pulled Su Yinghan aside. Principal Su, do you know anyone here? I know the director well. Why? Could you get me a copy of that video recording? As soon as possible, and discreetly. Su Yinghan gave him a deep look. Fang Jian smiled. Actually, I have some other art pieces as well. I'll need Principal Su's expertise to appraise them in the future. Su Yinghan immediately replied, Alright, leave this minor matter to me. Remember, don't alert anyone else. Su Yinghan nodded silently. Wang Linqing and Luo Jiqiang stepped out of the appraisal center. Wang Linqing fumed. Jiqiang, are we just letting this slide? Luo Jiqiang covered his face and retorted. Forget it? When have I, Luo Jiqiang, ever taken such a raw deal? No way am I letting this slide. Then what do you plan to do? Luo Jiqiang sneered coldly. I'll make sure he's publicly shamed. Wang Lingxin's eyes lit up instantly. Luo Jiqiang whispered, I'll come back tonight. First, I need to retrieve that video footage from earlier. Chapter 228, Wang Tianpao's hidden strength comes to fruition. Fang Jian, why did you get into a fight with them? Tan Moyang frowned. He's nothing but a pain in the neck. Why stir up trouble? Fang Jian smiled faintly. And Tan, it wasn't that I wanted trouble. They kept pushing themselves in my face. I had no choice. Hearing Fang Jian's explanation, Su Yinghan, who had just returned, couldn't help but smile. He handed over a USB drive. I copied it as you requested. No one else knows except my old friend. Thanks, Principal Su. You're welcome. Just remember to share any good finds with me in the future. Let me see what you've got. You can count on it. Fang Jian paused before adding, by the way, when are the people from the other two countries arriving? Tomorrow. They'll definitely be here. Alright, I'll be heading to Europe the day after tomorrow. Fang Jian said firmly. Once they finish their appraisal tomorrow, I'll leave immediately. Ah, is it that important? Yes. I promised someone I'd attend a concert. Fang Jian said with a smile. A concert? Yeah, I work in music. It'd be rude to back out now. Fang Jian grinned. Besides, if I didn't travel around, how else would I find this stuff? Su Yinghan nodded repeatedly, though inwardly unconvinced. After bidding farewell, Fang Jian went to the bank and placed the copperplate engraving into his safe deposit box. Then he pulled out his phone and called Robert. International calls weren't cheap, but for Fang Jian, anything money could solve wasn't a problem. Robert answered promptly. When Fang Jian mentioned he would be traveling to Switzerland the day after tomorrow, Robert was overjoyed. Of course, Fang Jian's excuse was that he wanted to open accounts at 2 banks in Switzerland. Robert immediately proposed 2 performances in Europe. Fang Jian considered it and said, Alright, I agree, but I don't want to travel around. Let's just set the performance location in Switzerland. Switzerland. Alright, Switzerland has 2 world-class opera houses, the Zurich Opera House and the Grand Theatre de Genève. Let's go with those. Fang Jian chuckled. Hey, I'm coming to perform. They might not have any available dates. Robert replied without hesitation. No problem. I'll make the arrangements. They'll definitely have availability. Though neither city is Switzerland's capital, both are world-renowned. Moreover, such opera houses don't host performances every day, so finding a suitable slot wasn't actually difficult. Within just an hour, Robert had already made the calls. Feng, we've secured 2 performances, one Saturday evening and another Sunday evening. That fast? Ha! I told you before, anything's negotiable as long as you're willing to come. Robert sounded slightly smug. By the way, when are you heading to the UK, Germany, and the States, plus America and Australia? Oh, and Little Japan, South Korea, and the Arab world have all invited you. They're throwing around some serious cash. Fang Jian replied without hesitation. I'll wait for the right opportunity. Alright. Robert felt a hint of disappointment, but since Fang Jian had already agreed to 2 shows today, he couldn't very well ask for more. However, Robert had underestimated the fame of the Oriental Pavarotti. When the news leaked, opera fans across Europe were electrified. Then, like snowflakes, invitations completely flooded Robert. Fang Jian returned home and glanced at his computer. Today's 100 bitcoins had already sold out. Watching the volatile swings in Bitcoin's price, Fang Jian couldn't help but wonder if this thing was about to surge again, ready to cut another batch of retail investors. The only silver lining was that the government had made its stance clear. Bitcoin was not recognized within the country, so even if they wanted to fleece investors, they couldn't target domestic citizens. But then, looking at the stock market, the mere thought of the domestic stock market left Fang Jian speechless. Truth is, retail investors are the easy targets in any country. This is a universally acknowledged truth. But countries that can harvest the chives so brazenly? There really aren't many of those. The phone rang. He glanced at the screen, an international number. After answering, the caller rattled off a string of information. It was HSBC calling to upgrade his bank card tier. Fang Jian inquired briefly and agreed to visit when he had time. The primary benefit of upgrading a bank card tier was the increased transfer limit. This was actually quite important to Fang Jian. Then, he received a call from Wang Tianpao, inviting him to the martial arts gym. With nothing else to do, Fang Jian headed over. The kid was standing on the ring, slowly warming up his limbs. Watching his movements, Fang Jian found them somewhat peculiar. When this guy moved, his actions were agile and lightning fast, giving off a sense of effortless control. Fang Jian began to understand. Sure enough, upon seeing Fang Jian, Wang Tianpao immediately invited him onto the stage for a match. Liang Chao and the others were also present, cheering him on from below. Truthfully, Everyone knew Wang Tianpao couldn't beat Fang Jian, but here, it seemed Wang Tianpao was the only one qualified to exchange a few blows with Fang Jian. Fang Jian naturally accepted the challenge and stepped onto the stage. The two faced each other from a distance. Wang Tianpao suddenly lunged forward, unleashing a barrage of fierce attacks toward Fang Jian. Each punch carried the peak power of overt force. Crack, crack. The deafening crack echoed repeatedly across the stage. Below the ring, Liang Chao watched with eyes red with envy. When will I ever reach this level? The others, however, though they watched with excitement, felt little envy. They knew their own limits. This level was beyond their reach for life. Moments later, Wang Tianpao suddenly roared and unleashed a punch straight to the chest. As the fist shot forward, every pore on his body closed, the punch striking like thunder. Fang Jian extended his palm to meet it. Smack! A light sound echoed as Wang Tianpao couldn't stop his momentum, staggering back 3 steps. His final step slammed down so hard it gouged a deep hole in the sturdy floorboards. Spectators stared in stunned silence. Is this guy even human? Star. Chapter 229, This is unfair. Hidden Force? Liang Chao exclaimed. Brother Wang, you've mastered Hidden Force? His voice brimmed with excitement. Before this, he had only ever seen Fang Jian master the Dark Force. This left him perpetually anxious about where his own limits might lie. But now, seeing even Brother Wang master the Dark Force felt like an adrenaline shot coursing through his veins, filling him with boundless confidence. If Brother Wang could do it, why couldn't he? Wang Depeo burst into laughter. That's right, I sought out my senior brother, walked the red path with him, and then I really did master it. Fang Jian smiled and said, Congratulations. Truthfully, this method isn't a universal solution. Without sufficient insight and strength, even 10 trips down the path would yield nothing. But Wang Depeo was originally a formidable soldier. Though retired, his foundation remained strong, and the fiery passion within him had never truly faded. Thus, after traversing the Red Road this time, he was genuinely moved and ultimately succeeded. Wang Depeo said, Fang Jian, my senior brother wishes to meet you. Fang Jian paused, then said, he'd be welcome. Wang Depeo gave a wry smile. My senior brother already went above and beyond by accompanying me on this journey. His work is quite demanding, making it difficult for him to travel. So, Fang Jian instantly understood this was an invitation for him to come over. If anyone else had made such a request, Fang Jian would have laughed it off. We're both martial artists, you're not stronger than me, and I have no need to seek your favor. Why should I go see you? But Wang Depeo was Wang Donglian's brother. It was just a trip, how could that be a big deal? Alright, Brother Wang. I'm heading to Europe the day after tomorrow. I'll come see your senior brother when I get back. Seeing Fang Jian agree so readily, Wang Depeo felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He nodded lightly and said, Good brother, if you ever need anything in the future, just give me a shout. Your big brother will make it happen. Alright, I'll definitely bother you whenever I need something. Both men burst into laughter simultaneously. On the training platform, they practiced for another half hour. During that time, though Wang Depeo appeared to be the aggressor, Fang Jian was constantly offering guidance. Even a fool could see the significant gap in their abilities. Liang Chao watched from below, filled with envy. Brother Wang had already mastered the hidden force technique, yet it seemed the gap between him and Master had only widened since their last sparring session. This clearly showed that the Master was also making steady progress. As his disciple, he must strive harder. He absolutely couldn't bring shame upon his Master. That evening, Jun Tao joined them, and the two groups reunited. Then, the group shared a meal together. When it ended, Jun Tao suggested going singing, but Fang Jian flatly refused. Though Liang Chao was quite interested, Fang Jian dragged him instead to the shooting range. Men have an endless fascination with guns and cars. Upon seeing the firearms, the slight disappointment in Liang Chao's heart vanished instantly. He eagerly picked up a gun and began shooting under Fang Jian's guidance. Of course, the firearm he used was different from Fang Jian's, and his accuracy was nowhere near comparable. While teaching him how to shoot, Fang Jian asked, Liang Chao, how's the training I gave you going? Liang Chao quickly replied, Master, I practice every day. I feel stronger with each passing day. He had trained in Sanda before, but the sense of progress back then was nowhere near as pronounced as it was now. Of course, he also knew this might be related to his soaking in medicinal baths. Fang Jian raised the rifle and put on his ear protection. Liang Chao quickly followed suit. Bang, bang, bang. After 10 shots, Fang Jian removed his ear protection and said slowly, training requires unwavering focus. Until you reach the peak of the Mingjing stage. If you can't endure it, don't bother coming back to me. Only then did Liang Chao understand. He hurriedly replied, Master, I promise I won't go to those places anymore. Martial arts training is tedious and arduous. If one couldn't endure the patience required, it was better not to practice at all. Otherwise, giving up before reaching the end would be a true waste of all prior effort. The medicinal bath Feng Jian had given him had the effect of strengthening his foundation and nourishing his essence, helping him reach the peak of the Mingjing realm as quickly as possible. But if he indulged in nightly revelry during this process, even the finest medicine would be wasted. Seeing Liang Chao's current state, Feng Jian felt quite satisfied. At that moment, the target paper slowly returned, guided by the machine. Liang Chao's eyes widened in shock at the score displayed on the target. Even Zhang Tao, who had come over to take a look, wore an expression of utter disbelief. He couldn't help but feel that his old classmate was becoming more and more mysterious. Feng Jian patted Liang Chao on the shoulder and said, "Keep at it. When you master the art of transforming force and achieve unity of body, eyes, mind, and hand, you'll be able to do it too." Liang Chao nodded vigorously, his gaze unwavering. Wang Tianpao, standing nearby, shot him a subtle glance, silently grumbling to himself. Another one fooled by Feng Jian. Transforming force? Is it really that easy to master? Even though he had already reached the level of hidden force, achieving the level of transforming force, he still had no confidence whatsoever. That night, the group parted ways, and Wang Tianpao returned home. During the late-night snack, Wang Tianpao downed 2 bottles of baijiu and single-handedly took down 3 men. Of course, Feng Jian had only 1 glass before refusing any more, but Zhang Tao and Liang Chao got completely drunk. Feng Jian had to call a car to send them both home. When Wang Tianpao got home, he kicked off his shoes, and the stench of alcohol hit the room like a wave. Wang Donglian rushed out, covering her nose and complaining, "Brother, you've only been back a day and you're already out again with your rowdy friends. I'm telling Mom and Dad." Wang Tianpao roared with laughter. "Riffraff? Yeah, they sure are riffraff. Ha ha." Wang Donglian's eyes darted around. "Who did you go out with? It wasn't Brother Feng, was it? Well, you're sharp for a little girl." Wang Tianpao chuckled. "You got it, that kid." He sighed. "Man, I thought this time around, with my skills improved, even if I couldn't beat him, I could at least hold out longer." Shaking his head, he belched and sighed helplessly. "But what can you do? This world is full of unreasonable geniuses. His progress is actually faster than mine. It's just not fair."